Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the April Fool's edition of the City Council meeting.
Oh, yeah.
There will be no jokes, please. Um, Even though it's a great day, but let's be sensible. Okay, so I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask for approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Next, we will have public comment. And if you would like to make public comment, raise your hand. When you are called on, come up to the podium, give your name and mailing address. And keep it under 3 minutes, 2 minutes for April Fools, and be kind and respectful. Richard?
My name is Richard Bertolotti, P.O. Box 1382, Cannon Beach. As a member of, there's a letter I've sent to all of you already, so I'm going to read it, probably not verbatim, but I'll try to read it quickly and get through it. As a member of the city's budget committee, I was made aware of an ongoing issue with the building official fund. As a private citizen, I have concerns about how the city manages this fund. This fund is an account that is restricted by the state law and can only be used for building inspections. Attached is an email dated March 13th, 2025, which was forwarded by Jen to all of us on the budget committee and the city council. Included in that is a email from Tim Ramey dated May of 2023. It was addressed to the then financial manager, Larry Swery, to Bruce St. Dennis, and the city council at the time. With his concerns about the growth of the building official fund and how much it would grow with the anticipated city building projects. Included in that email chain is a email dated April of 23 from Todd Smith, a project manager, a policy manager for the Oregon State Building Codes Division, confirming, and I quote, that building permit fees are, the quote is, used for the administration enforcement of inspection of the building inspection program. There's a very tight restriction on this fund. It can only be used for one thing. In the May 2023 email, Mr. Ramey recommended that the city council adjust building permit fees to rebalance the building official fund. His recommendation was not adopted during the 2023 or the 2024 budget cycle, and the building official fund is now grown to a balance of $801,000 as of December 31, 2024. This balance equals about 3 years of building official expenses. The amount in the building official fund is excess of what is needed for the building official. It is not indicative of sound financial management of city funds. These funds are restricted by the state and cannot be spent on any other city business. I strongly urge the city council to retroactively adjust building permits for this fiscal year, the 2024-2025 fiscal year, to a very small fraction of the current rate, say 1%, and refund all building permit fees collected this fiscal year except for the 1% charge before the end of the fiscal year, June 30, 2025. Included in the refund would be about $200,000 the city charged itself for the new city hall and the police station. I realize that 3 of you were new to the city council in May of 2023, and that 2 of you are new to the city council this year in 2025. Now is the time to take action before the end of the 24-25 fiscal year end on June 30, 2025. Thank you for consideration. I'd like to add 2 quick things. One is the city has adequate funds to operate the building official fund for the foreseeable future, even after the refunds were given. As an alternative to the refunding of the building permit fees, the city council could make fiscal 24-25 permit fees a payment in lieu of permit fees to the Affordable Housing Fund. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Next. Randy?
Randy Neal, P O Box 1092. I got a couple of topics. The first one is the 2019-2020 water rate or water and sewer rate methodology change. As we learned last month, that methodology changed the allowances and the fees for users with large pipes, and they were changed dramatically. The report that was done at the time said this may be unfair to some multi-unit housing developments, but nobody seemed to analyze or understand its impacts. And then in March, we learned the Elk Creek has been badly affected for 4.5 years now. Tonight, you'll learn that even multi-unit housing clusters with pipes as small as 2 inches are affected. For example, the city's proposal to change Elk Creek's meter billing to 2 inches would still cost them 30% more than an equivalent resident. I've sent some spreadsheets around to you guys for different scenarios. This is just one example of housing clusters. But what's worse is it appears the same methodology can offer lots of cost breaks in the other direction to clusters that have a large proportion of second homeowners. And this is equally unfair in the opposite direction. Cannon Beach needs more multi-unit housing developments like these to fix its housing problem. And our billing methodology needs to be fixed to fix not only the Elk Creek types of things, but the other people are paying, let's say, 60% or 50% of what we expect a resident to pay. The second topic is the Elk Creek Corrective Action Plan falls short. The revised billing rate using a 2-inch meter will generate a 30% penalty for this low-income cluster. The proposed cumulative payments in the recommendation mentions no dollar figure. The proposal seems to suggest a grant per process, which seems to have other strings attached. It doesn't sound very timely. I've included a worksheet that implies, some simple math that it seems like maybe $160,000 is a fair figure over these 4.5 years. And I would suggest making 1-2 quick payments and let them get on with their businesses. Third topic is, as Richard mentioned, the building fund needs fixing and needs fixing soon. I like the suggestion that came out of the budget committee that, if we can take down building fees, but raise affordable housing percentages, that would be an excellent idea. The second one is, if reducing the fees, as Richard suggests, creates a windfall for the city, I would suggest rolling that windfall into the affordable housing fund. I would also like to see, instead of maybe retroactively back to this year, seeing if there is some way to retroactively take it back to prior years as well. Like the building fund, I brought this up before, the Parks SDC fee has a similar issue. It can really only be spent for that item in the master plan, which is 95% of it is the NACUS park. We're collecting it, but we're collecting it only from new residents. It's a 70-30 split between existing residents and new residents. So we're only collecting 30% of it. We all know that we're going to be spending it from tourism dollars. So we're raising dollars that can never be spent. So that's my comments.
Thank you. Next. Nobody in the audience? Michelle? Okay.
Hi. Okay. Oh, yes, Michelle, Valagura, PO Box 719. Okay. Yesterday, March 31st, was International Transgender Day of Visibility. I'm not sure if you all were aware. Current proposals in the United States that prohibit transgender people from being able to use public restrooms that align with who they are. This trend of fear mongering and demonization is a threat to their health and safety. Safety and privacy is important to all of us. Research consistently finds that transgender people experience verbal harassment and physical assault in these spaces. 59% of trans people avoid using public restrooms due to fear of harassment. Data from 2022 found that 6% of trans people said they were physically or verbally attacked while using the bathroom. So yes, messaging and language matters. I don't know if you all got my email. Did anybody? Yeah, okay. I sent it.
I'm a little behind on emails because.
Totally cool.
I couldn't keep it in my neutral site.
Okay, so this is from glad.org. Harming someone in a public restroom is already illegal. Bathroom bans often have no guidance on enforcement, and they can result in invasion of privacy for everyone when individual citizens randomly and often mistakenly attempt to enforce these vaguely constructed statutes. President Donald Trump's executive orders inaccurately state that there are only two sexes, ignoring the reality of intersex people and decades of established medical and scientific research about sex and gender diversity throughout history and cultures. That's why every major medical association and health authority in the world recognizes and supports healthcare for transgender people. Trump has attempted to use his orders to impose discriminatory and anti-trans bathroom bans for restrooms on federal property. The executive order does not override the US Constitution, federal statutes, or established legal precedent. Federal judges have already struck down many of its executive orders, while constitutionality of others continue to be challenged in court. Imposing discrimination on transgender people from the federal law would be illegal under the Supreme Court's Bostock decision, which ruled that discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity is unconstitutional sex discrimination. As early as March 2025, yes, March 2025, 6 anti-transgender bills have been introduced nationwide and 9 have been passed. In 2024, 674 anti-trans bills have been proposed and 50 have passed. Of the potential bills in 2025 so far, 44 seek to restrict transgender bathroom access. Transgender people, this is from the ACLU, should not be unfairly discriminated against and should be allowed to use facilities and participate in activities that match who they are. The ACLU also states, we believe it's not only the right to answer from a human point of view, but it's also legally required by statutory constitutional bans on sex discrimination. I mean, that's it. Okay, I'm aware, I'm under the assumption that this oversight for the new bathroom signs, which was in the email, that whatever, is just a simple accidental mistake. I believe everyone in earshot has heard my ongoing plea, most recently the last TAC meeting, to make these bathrooms a safe place for everyone. I'm aware that a lot of people do not understand why I'm taking such a strong stance on this issue for the past year and a half. I would ask and ask yourself, when in history has signage been a tool of segregation? When has signage excluded humans from bathrooms, coffee shops, water fountains, or public pools? What side of history do we want to be on? So suggesting that a single stall bathroom is for family use is a slippery slope and creating exclusion with possible unsanctioned monitoring of who gets to use the bathroom and cultivating unnecessary escalation and questioning what is absolutely a basic human dignity. To me, this is more important than a backyard fire pit, more important than the color of a house. I feel like this should be as important to all of us here, people who are fighting for their rights, losing them rapidly. I'm pleading with you to please help me do the right thing and have my plea heard and change the sign to be an inclusive one. Let's be on the right side of history. Also, the sign's new. I feel like you guys have the box. You could just send it back and get the proper signage. Anyhow, I'd like to hear you guys maybe talk about this and go to the order. That'd be great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle.
Right now. What? Okay, thanks.
Next, in the audience. Okay, is there anyone on Zoom? If you'd raise your hand, please. Okay, last chance? Okay, thank you all. Okay, first on our agenda tonight, we have resolution 2504 for the purpose of updating system development charges to reflect inflation related increases. Here. Bruce?
This is Karen's proclamation night. Just 5.
Right, but we're first doing the
I
resolution.
know.
Okay. She's gonna resolute before she proclaims.
Okay.
Okay.
Our Unicode 3.16.040, the city manager shall report the city council annually with respect to the inflationary calculation. Such calculations will be based upon changes in the engineering new records construction index, ENR. In compliance with Oregon statutes, the current methodology recommends that the city use the engineering news record construction code index 20-city average as the basis for adjusting STCs annually. The percentage increase in the index from the last update in January of 2025 is 2.9%, which represents a $245.57 total increase over last year. At the March 11th, 2025 council work session, staff presented the annual review and proposed increase of SDCs as recommended by the adopted methodology. Per Cannon Beach Muni Code, Section 3.16.040 and 3.16050, and ORS Chapter 223, which provide the council shall be resolution established and modify SDC methodologies and rates. Recommendation is suggested motion. I move to approve the resolution 2504 for the purpose of updating system development charges to reflect inflation rate increases.
Okay, anybody have any questions?
I just have a comment, and I think I made it during the last meeting. I think it would be worth our while in the budget meeting for us to review all the SDCs, because I feel like this is an area in our code that puts a barrier in front of affordable housing of the additional fees that go in the parks SDCs, and review how those affect housing that goes in. But that's just a review of the comment that I made at our last meeting when we first discussed this.
So you'd like it discussed in the budget?
And I feel like that would be the appropriate place to discuss that.
Or housing code.
In the house, yeah, either.
Right.
But discussing this along with the other fees that the building.
Kind of reduction or waiver within the housing code, since we're in the middle of that.
Mhm.
Probably makes some sense.
Right.
Well, I move to approve resolution 2504 for the purpose of updating system development charges to reflect inflation related increases.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Council President Kerr,
Yes.
Councilor Ostrander,
Yes.
Councilor Hammond,
Yes.
Councilor Hayes,
Yes.
Mayor Knopf.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Next is resolution 2505 for the purpose of approving increases for the fiscal year 24-25 budget by making an interfund transfer of appropriation in recycling. Karen? Oh, I wondered what you were running to get.
The city of Cannon Beach is preparing for the construction of a new city hall building at its current location. Staff will be moved off-site temporary staffing facilities that require an extension of the electrical power located at South Hemlock, continuing east down Second Street towards the existing recycle depot adjacent to where the trailers will be located. The existing recycle depot does not currently have power for internet in the office of the employee responsible for managing the depot. This is a necessary part of the employee's job function to have access to work email for public works communications while running power for the temporary staffing facilities is necessary for this construction move, Public Works would like to share in the cost to further extend the power from the temporary staffing trailer pedestal location on to the recycle depot to resolve this lack of email access issue. A budget amendment will be required to accomplish the extension of power for this purpose. There are appropriate funds in the current authorized budget for this adjustment.
Okay, anybody have any questions?
So I guess I'm kind of confused. There's cameras down there already that are running on internet.
There's power for the baler that bales the cardboard and whatnot. There's no internet access.
Okay, well, I thought we had the security cameras down there that were,
Not in that one.
oh, I thought we had some there. Okay,
Going to once we have power there.
okay. Yeah, that was my confusion. I thought that we already had cameras there and I was like, why do we need more power if we have internet that's powering? Okay.
I'm thrown a little bit by South Hemlock. Where is this power?
That's the closest Pacific Power pole where we could extend power from, right between the skate park and the chamber. That power pole there is where the power is pulled from for the temporary trailers. That work has already been done.
It's actually Spruce. It's closer to Spruce. Right next to the
Sorry,
Chamber
yes,
building.
thank you.
And if it was on Hemlock, it would be North Hemlock, but.
Yeah.
Yep.
But it's actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, just Spruce and Second.
It
Yep.
is, yep. So the power was extended from that location to the temporary trailer site where a pedestal is. And we want to extend it from that pedestal to the recycle.
So when the city hall building, the temporary building is no longer there, is that the pedestal that's the current that just got installed there, is that going to be coming out? And then is there just gonna be like an underground vault or something, pull station?
It would stay as it is today,
The one that's in the middle of the.
right? Mhm.
Put in a 3-phase transformer there for the recycle center. So that's what that is, the big one.
The new one that's, oh, okay. All right.
It's in the green belt. That's where the trees are.
Yep.
It's not in the parking lots.
Yeah. The one
Belt
that's
area.
Planner, correct.
Yeah.
that area.
Mhm.
The smaller service won't be necessary. They can take that out because it's feeding the buildings, the temp buildings.
Oh, okay, all right.
I move to approve resolution 2505 for the purpose of approving increases for the FY 2024-25 budget by making an infra fund transfer of appropriations.
Second. Any further discussion? Okay, roll call please, Jen.
Counselor Osterhage,
Yes.
Counselor Hammond,
Yes.
Counselor Hayes,
Yes.
Council President Kerr.
Yes.
Mayor Knopf.
Yes. Thank you. Next, we're going to move into our proclamation section. We have several.
Get ready.
Yes.
Cannon Beach has recently been designated for its 17th year as a Tree City USA by the Arbor Day Foundation in honor of its commitment to effective urban forest management. The city is one of more than 3,400 Tree City USAs. The Tree City USA program is sponsored by the Arbor Day Foundation in partnership with the U.S. Forest Service and the National Association of State Foresters. National Arbor Day is April 25th this year. Arbor Day activities, including the annual tree planting ceremony, will take place during the 12 Days of Earth festivities in Cannon Beach.
Any questions?
I move to adopt proclamation 2502 for the purpose of proclaiming April 25th, 2025 as Arbor Day in the city of Cannon Beach.
Second. That's correction on the fly.
Any further discussion? Okay, roll call please.
Counselor Hammond,
Yes.
Counselor Hayes,
Yes.
Council President Kerr,
Yes.
Counselor Osterhage,
Yes.
Mayor Knopf.
Yes. Are we okay with not reading all the proclamation?
You're good. It's up to you.
Well, it's not.
Is that okay? We don't read them all.
Yeah.
Would be a bit of a relief.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Well, then let's read
For
them.
everybody.
No, that's not, that's not,
I'm joking.
it's not,
Okay.
say we did.
That was my April Fool's joke. Everybody laugh, come on. Okay, next proclamation.
April 22nd, 2025 marks 55 years of the Earth Day celebration. As part of the Earth Day celebration each year, the Parks and Community Services Committee coordinates the 12 Days of Earth event to educate the community and visitors about the unique, complex coastal environment and ecosystem of the area. We would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge and recognize Earth Day and the work the Parks and Community Services Committee and volunteers have done to continue the tradition of the 12 Days of Earth. And it's going to be spectacular this year.
I move to adopt proclamation 2503 for the purpose of proclaiming April 22nd, 2025 as Earth Day in the city of Cannon Beach.
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Counselor Hayes,
Yes.
Council President Kirk,
Yes.
Counselor Ostrander. Counselor Hammond. Mayor Knopf.
Yes. Thank you, Karen. Okay, next we have proclamation for Dark Sky Week, and I'd like to thank Eric for making this suggestion. And Bruce?
Thank you, ma'am. Third week in April is Dark Sky Appreciation Week. The city is discussing upgrading our streetlights to dark sky friendly lights. The Oregon Coast Visitors Association and Travel Oregon are also running night skies tourism initiatives. There's a citizen dark sky focus group working on improving our lighting regulations to protect our dark skies. Thank you, Councilor Ostrander, for suggesting the city participate in this week. The suggested motion is I move to adopt Proclamation 2504 for the purpose of designating April 21st to the 25th, 2025 as Dark Sky Week.
Any questions?
I move to adopt proclamation 2504 for the purpose of designating April 21st to 25th, 2025 as Dark Sky Week.
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Council President Kirk,
Yes.
Counselor Ostrander,
Yes.
Counselor Hammond,
Yes.
Counselor Hayes,
Yes.
Mayor Knopf.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Next, please.
Good evening. Sexual Assault Awareness Month is intended to draw attention to the fact that sexual violence is widespread and impacts every community member. Every individual and community in Oregon has a role to play to help eliminate sexual violence by working together to promote social change. In Clatsop County, the Harbor's mission is to provide advocacy, prevention, and support while promoting self-determination and hope for survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, and stalking. Through partnerships in the local area and across Oregon, the Harbor is committed to protecting survivors. Their goal is to break the cycle of violence through education, one-on-one support, practical assistance, and referrals. We have Alexia Smith, Co-Director of Services from the Harbor, and she's going to talk about the proclamation and the program. Thanks, Alexia.
Welcome.
I have a few little itty bitty words to say. So together we act, united we change is a phrase that holds an incredible amount of weight, especially during the month of April. This echoes more than just the current theme around Sexual Assault Awareness Month. This phrase should be remembered for all things. As a community, we have a moral obligation to lift up, protect, and support one another. We are all stronger together than we are apart and more alike than we are different. Sexual assault does not discriminate on the grounds of gender, race, color, or creed. Perhaps some of our closest friends or family members have endured this terrible act and rise each morning as a survivor with strength and courage. Let us stand together as a united front to help spread awareness, embody upstream approaches to prevention, and educate and encourage those around us to act onto one another with kindness and love. Let us foster and nurture a culture of dignity and respect and remain united in the face of violence.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alexia.
Any discussion?
I move to adopt Proclamation 2505 for the purpose of designating the month of April 2025 as Sexual Assault Awareness Month.
Second.
Further discussion? Roll call, please, Jen.
Counselor Ostrander,
Yes.
Counselor Hammond,
Yes.
Counselor Hayes,
Yes.
Council President Kerr,
Yes.
Mayor Knopf.
Yes. Okay, next.
There are some pretty amazing statistics in that
Yeah,
proclamation.
Yeah.
Actually.
there is.
Uh,
Would you like to read it?
Uh, I won't go through the formality of reading it all, but, some of the things that struck me, 1 in 10 Clatsop County middle and high school students report inappropriate sexual contact by an adult before they turn 18. Certain populations in Oregon experience much higher rates of sexual violence due to systemic oppression and inequality. And out of 1,000 sexual assaults, only 25 perpetrators will face any legal repercussions for assault.
Oh.
Those are things, right?
Yep. Thank you. Okay, next.
Spring is a time of new beginnings. It's also the time to renew our commitment to the protection of children in our community. Since 1983, a presidential proclamation has designated April as National Child Abuse Prevention Month. Observing Child Abuse Prevention Month allows us to raise awareness of the severity of this issue and to arm citizens with the tools to help prevent abuse from happening. Awareness of a problem creates intentional change. Hundreds of children in Clatsop County are exposed to violence, drug abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, and neglect. Chances are all of us know at least one child who's been the victim of child abuse and neglect.
And do we have COPSA representatives?
Yes.
Hi, Katrina.
Katrina.
Hi, thank you.
Nice to hear your voice.
I know, I wish I was there in person to see your lovely faces.
Right.
Well, I just have a few words. I want to thank the city of Cannon Beach for this proclamation and for your support of Clatsop Casa's work. As most of you know, Clatsop Casa works with community partners like the city of Cannon Beach to strengthen families, enhance service delivery, and build childhood resiliency. One thing you may not know is that Clatsop Casa needs volunteers now more than ever. As our community experiences the ongoing fentanyl epidemic, child abuse and neglect are on the rise. For example, last year, the Oregon Poison Center at OHSU reported a dramatic increase in cases of young children under the age of 6 exposed to fentanyl, and 93% of the children were exposed in their family homes. Our families are put under emotional and other stressors, and our Oregon communities are experiencing a collective trauma. But one group of people who speak up for children is the Clatsop Casa program volunteers. They work with children in the county welfare court system who have experienced abuse or neglect. They meet with the children in person at least monthly. They advocate for the children's best interests and provide information to judges that help them make the most well-informed decisions for each child. If anyone listening is willing to get involved in a life-changing and sometimes life-saving cause, the safety, health, and well-being of children, volunteer applications can be found on our website, and it's www.clatsopcasa.org. It is up to all of us to make sure that the children in Clatsop County and our communities are safe. Thank you again.
Thank you.
I will move to adopt proclamation 2506 for the purpose of designating the month of April 2025 as Child Abuse Prevention Month.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Counselor Hammond, Counselor Hayes,
Yes.
Council President Kerr,
Yes.
Counselor Ostrander,
Yes.
Mayor Knopf.
Yes. Okay, thank you, everyone. Okay, now we're moving on to action and discussion items, and the first item is consideration of the Elk Creek Terrace utility rate changes.
Good afternoon, counselors, or good evening, counselors. I did tell Jamie that we would be on about 6:30.
I said, we're not gonna be on, I'm after 8 o'clock tonight. Thanks for having us back. I'm apologizing for Dan that can't be here because he's traveling to, I think he's in Redmond or South somewhere doing a conference. So he's stuck with me today. I snuck in and I met with Tim unintentionally this afternoon because I was digging into some information. So we had a chance to visit a little bit. And I think he'll take the lead on this one.
Sure. So one thing that we went through, I remember when we met last month, Councilor Ostrander wanted us to look at the 36 3/4 inch meter standard rate. What we found with that was it was really manual. The other weird thing, what we found was that actually if you just had a single meter at 3/4 and did the charges, they came within $3,000 over the 5-year time period. So so we've ran scenarios on 3/4 inch, a 1-inch meter and the 2-inch meter with regards to what we would change it to. Our recommendation is the 2-inch meter, which is what the engineer said, but the price or the differences in billing roughly, actually, I want to say one thing really quickly. Jamie and her team have done a great job since they've really fixed the leaks and done the water conservation stuff. They have saved roughly $1,100 a month plus about 3,000 cubic feet in water. So they've done an outstanding job over the last 3 months. So what the current rate would be for them roughly on the 6-inch meter is about $6,800. What on a 2-inch meter, it would be roughly $4,000 per month on that case. The other recommendation that we had here was that, again, we know that there are some large deferred maintenance needs at the facility. And talked about a little bit with Jamie about some of the things, but one of the recommendations we would have, and again, totally up to council, is that we would have them apply for the grant to be able to help get a lot of that deferred maintenance done. So, and with that, I'll turn it back over to Jamie.
What I wanted to just bring to your attention today was once we got this information from Tim, I just started digging in the weeds deep into what the actual number is, because there's some different numbers that are the actual number of, well, what if we were billed appropriately? Well, what if this, what if we weren't charged the penalties? And so we were gathering, I started gathering that information. But I ran into storm drain fees, which a lot of people have done a lot of different information and numbers on these, but they don't talk a lot about the storm drain fees. And so what I wanted to just bring to your attention was that our unit size was brought from 20,000 down to 400. So you're recognizing us as a single family unit. But when it comes to storm drain, you do charge us for the 36 units. So you do recognize us 36 units. So we're getting a double penalty from that change of units. So it's just something that I just noticed. And so that's, and everyone's, I did a read through, there's a lot of material. And I read through some of the different changes, and I do know that everyone is affected by that. But what stuck with me was that we're recognized as one unit, but then also recognized as 36 units, and we're being penalized on each side of that. To me, it seems like a little bit of a double hit. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. The other thing is, sorry, my mouth is dry because I'm nervous, is the numbers. We were coming up with different numbers. I visited with Tim for a minute today, and we just figured out that we had different dates. So he looked at the starting date against mine, and so we were really close to that same number for when the big jump started, which would have been September 1, 2020, when the unit size changed. When I saw the proposal, it doesn't talk about the units. It doesn't say that it says this is what our change would be per month, which is wonderful. But it doesn't say this is how many units you have. Are we still at 400 or are we gonna have a different unit because of different meter? Or I don't know. It's just not mentioned here. So I'm just curious about that because if it remains at 400, we're gonna continue to have penalties every single month, even with the change. So I just want that to be recognized. And then also, it's so, we greatly appreciate the opportunity for the grant. We talked about it a little bit last time and I instantly jumped into it. But we are very thoughtful about receiving a grant. And with that and getting bids for remodeling our 2 units that have been down, one of them has very serious structural damage because of the siding issues. And we think it's very important to receive a capital needs assessment, which is very important to determine if we can save the building. Because if we can't save the building, we don't want to take money and put it into a building that they're gonna take the building down. That would be a waste of money, grant money that can go to a different purpose, maybe at our property, maybe because I don't know if one building, I think everything's savable, but it's a pretty bad envelope. So we really have to be thoughtful about that. That analysis to make sure we're not going to start remodeling something that really shouldn't be remodeled. Because that's a pretty big expense. Just that unit alone would be close to probably $60,000 because of the envelope and siding. We do have another unit that's just a middle unit, which is a pretty basic gutted unit, flooring, doors, floors, cabinets, fixtures, appliances, stuff like that. But it's a middle unit, so it's not affected by the siding issues of the exterior unit. So I already have, bids coming in for the cost of capital needs assessments. A capital needs assessment is going to be between $15,000 and $25,000. We're cash poor. We can't afford it. But we have to have that to move forward with any of our remodeling that we want to do because we're looking for a big grant from OHCS to do our rehab of our entire property. So we're trying to get all that information together so we can just start moving forward with our rehab with a plan of action. So since we've also met with OHCS, which is Oregon Housing something. It's who governs us in how we do our funding and manage our funding. And we are also working together on a plan specifically for Elk Creek. They haven't sent me out their instructions yet. So we have a lot of things going on in an effort to make repairs at Elk Creek, but it has to start with the CNA. So we were hoping that somehow when we get down to the numbers of the correct numbers on changing the billing methodology that we're talking about, we can come up with that number. And the grant is wonderful, but having since this process has started back in November, if somewhere along the way we were credited for something so that it turns into some type of way to pay for a CNA, whether it's grant money or however, that is what we're hoping we can also achieve is getting some cash, a piece of cash for that CNA, not for us, but for the CNA. So we can have all the ducks in a row to start this process of rebuilding and rehabbing Elk Creek. It'll just be beautiful. I don't know how many of you have been up to Elk Creek. It's an absolutely stunning property. The building looks horrific. We're afraid to power wash it because we're afraid it'll cause damage. And it's just a terrible building application that was on that poor property. It's this substandard building, but the property it sits on is magnificent. It's gorgeous. And I am very invested in that property. I've spent a lot of time out there coming from St. Helens. One summer I came up every single day for 2 weeks, driving 2 hours there and back, just so we can work on improving that property. Tenant relations, evictions, helping on-site staff, just to really get involved with that community. It's a very special community that has suffered tremendous losses. We've had 2 major car accidents, families getting killed. We had the tree come down, smash 5 cars. We've had all those things happen like within months of each other. And it's a very close-knit, lovely community with wonderful people. And so we are truly invested in this community. And we greatly appreciate the help that you're offering us. And it starts with adjusting this, which we're totally want to just work on fine tuning the numbers to figure it out. So we appreciate it very much. I just wanted to make sure you had that information on the unit use and the storm drain use, and kind of looking at that so you can maybe balance that somehow. You have any questions? I know that's a lot. I'm sorry, I'm a little emotional.
Who owns the land itself? Is that on?
You.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did you say $24,000 for the capital needs assessment?
It's between 15 and 24, depending on what, because they have a general, I have a lot of information on that with me, but I'd have to dig through all this to find it. But you have a general capital needs assessment that's required no matter what. But then you have to have people that specialize in wood destroying organisms. And then like the roof package and certain applications, and there's like 5 different specialties that also have to be added to that. It's a small community. So they usually only take like 10% of it, or like units, I should say, which would be about 1/3, and inspect only 1/3 of these units. Because of the conditions it may only need to be inspected, the exterior and the 2 down units. I'm not sure. So I think the minimum cost would be 15, but it could be upwards to 25. Just to get that report. And the report is massive. It's like a 400-page report. They have pictures of every single thing. But because the envelope is the serious issue, that has to, and we have 3 buildings back there that are on slabs against that hillside with failing drainage system. So that is a concern. One of those units that need to be repaired is on that backside, on that slab. With a roof that never had overhangs on it because somewhere along the way they decided to cut costs, and who thought of that? I have no idea. But so we have just water intrusion that's just so unnecessary. But then you have the water intrusion coming into whiteboard that is framing the windows, which is just deteriorated. And we have water coming in behind the windows that is trapped between a double layer of Tyvek. So it's the application of that building, which is just crazy. So it's
Are you describing
on the walls,
Are you describing
that one unit.
structural siding?
Of that one unit, yeah.
Okay.
That's been down because it's not just a quick remodel of updating that it's residing that whole side. And it is possible, it could even involve windows depending on the frame, but it's mostly the frame of that. I personally discovered it because my hand went through the wall. And then it was like Jumanji in the walls, you know? And then I saw the Tyvek, and then I was driving home and I'm like, wait a minute, that's not supposed to be like that. Who double Tyveks it? Because they sealed in that moisture, which is causing a big problem there. That's the only reason we need the CNAs to determine the damage on the other buildings on that backside, because those are the ones that are going to be the worst. I think we can save all of it. It's just going to cost more money to do that one unit.
And the middle unit is in another building.
Different building, different location with a crawl space, not on a slab.
And so it could be brought back.
Absolutely.
Be a thing
Yeah, we just had,
what that would cost to get.
I would guesstimate, we're just doing the base, we're doing basic, flooring. But we got bids for cabinetry, but we want solid wood cabinetry. You just cannot do that pressboard cheap cabinet in these, they fall apart. And that's what happened. Our cabinets are literally falling apart. And unfortunately, we had a severe hoarding situation in that unit. And everything was gutted. It took us a day to get to the kitchen, how bad it was. So it's gutted down to the subfloor. It's all coming out, but that's just subfloor, underlayment, flooring, cabinets, sink, appliances, paint, sheetrock work, fixtures, toilet. I've done this my whole life, so I've got it down, but I'm guessing 35 to 40 max.
So I greatly appreciate, it's a lot, and I know that you're very emotionally invested, and that's awesome. I think we're here tonight to talk about the utility rate changes. And at our last meeting, and one of my notes is this number includes sewer. So I'm.
Yes.
I'm just on that. But I feel like they need to be made whole on what they've overpaid.
Well, I've actually been looking at some of the numbers, and since it seems that in September 1st, 2020, the council changed the base allowance for a 6-inch pipe to 400 cubic feet from 20,000 cubic feet. Is that correct?
Mhm.
And this meant that for a 6-inch pipe, any costs over 400 cubic feet would be charged at a higher rate per cubic foot. Okay, so the difference over the years that I could tell between what Elk Creek would have been charged for the 2-inch pipe rather than for the 6-inch pipe is approximately, the number I got was $123,365.
About $125,000. Correct.
So, and I'm not, I know that I really do think that there was some mismanagement happening.
Oh, absolutely.
And so,
Yes.
but I don't care whose fault it was, really. I mean, it certainly wasn't the fault of the city. I mean, that's for sure.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
But it doesn't matter to me whose fault it was. And I don't know. I don't think it does to Anna either. The fact is that I think that, I'd like to see Elk Creek receive a credit is one way of doing it, for them, that amount of funds. And if for it to come from the water reserves, but for us to make an inter-fund transfer of that amount to the water reserve fund, so it could cover it from the general fund. If that, or else have it come directly from the general fund. I don't care where it comes from, but I don't want to hurt the water reserves. Big projects going on.
Sure.
So if it was to come from water reserves, it'd have to be a fund transfer into water reserves of that amount of money to cover that overage. But I agree with Deanna. I think that I'd like to see Elk Creek made whole on this. And regardless of whose fault it is, again, I don't give a rip about that.
I'm on the same page. I want to see it made whole. I have concerns of the methodology that's used here because it still puts Elk Creek paying per apartment 30% more than any other residents in Cannon Beach on average for an affordable housing project.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know how we rectify that. That doesn't sit right with me that this is our most at-risk population. Their water rate is 30% more just because of some billing methodology that exists. And historically, it was 11% more, which I feel like was unacceptable then. But now we're talking 30%, and it's currently 2.5 times as much.
Yeah.
So I don't know what how we get down
Well,
so it's the same.
I just don't, I'm just thinking of other apartments. I know other apartment buildings and they don't have individual water meters
No,
in
it's
individual
usually including your
apartments.
rent or something like that.
They prorate it over the whole building.
Yeah.
What happens. But, yeah, I don't think you can
So
individual.
so one of the things you could do, the council could decide, instead of going with the 2-inch rate, 2-inch meter rate, in theory, you could go with the 3/4 inch rate, which again, still keeps the rate at essentially, it has the same methodology. It's the 400 cubic feet, et cetera. However, the way that rate works for, with regards to, how much it would take it from 6,800 to 3,500 a month, roughly. And then you would have a larger difference. We accepted that methodology. I think, Councilor Ostrander, one of the issues is having to do a manual calculation for an individual on a monthly basis has opportunity for disaster. So in order to be able to actually put it into the system where we could just run it, you would move it from where it is now a 6-inch pipe. You would use it as a 3/4 inch pipe if you prefer to do that. And then that would bring the rate down, which would save another $500 a month and move the number that would be owed to roughly $146,000.
What does that put the average monthly?
The average monthly right now would be about $3,500. Based on the last 4 months' activity.
Okay. And so that puts it really close within a percentage of what the average in Cannon Beach is for our average residential.
And I guess I would recommend too, it's the affordable housing aspect of it, because if we change this, I would always be concerned that other people would try to find a way into that loophole. But I think that is one way to be able to.
Well, if the other concerns were low-income subsidized housing by a nonprofit, then of course, I think they would deserve the same kind of consideration, but I don't think there are any others in this town, so I'm not really worried about that. As far as like equal protection, but yeah, I think that's a good idea.
And I would really, I don't want to see a reimbursement of this come out of the Affordable Housing Fund. I want to see this come out of the enterprise fund that was overpaid into. So the mixture of the wastewater, water out of the contingency or something like that, because it was an overpayment into this fund. It should be repaid back out from the fund it was overpaid into.
Is it really an overpayment?
I have a little bit of a hard time. I have a little bit of a hard time with that, but
They're overpaying. Yes.
Well, that's.
I'll be happy to.
They're overpaying what should have been their amount. That's the point,
but we also have to look at, so our rates were based on, users paying for it. So now we're back another step to it being subsidized somewhere. Number one, to take care of this retroactive and then moving forward.
How's it being subsidized?
Not.
Not being subsidized. It's being charged what it should be.
Right, which would just mean that the difference in those have to be, yes, on usage.
Rates based on,
It would be over
at
time.
that charge, they were paid, they were based on
Yeah.
paying those rates. So if they're not going to be paying those rates,
They were being over.
then we're collecting less to pay for our water system.
No,
Am I?
I'm sorry.
no, because they were paying for a 6-inch pipe when they weren't using.
Right, but when you're looking at the overall dollars in the system, right now, it was based on them paying with a 6-inch pipe. So when you remove that when you look at the overall system, the 146,000 over the 5-year period will have to be made up somewhere. So it would be through a rate now. Of course, it's over 5 years, so the rate to all other ratepayers would be, on a go-forward basis, will not be huge.
Yeah, it means next time we look at another
One other thing I did mention.
10-year plan or the next year.
I mentioned to the budget committee too, is that currently between the water fund with the debt and the way we're working through that, we've just gone through one rate study, and we would probably do it again in the 26-27 year. Just as these things become more aware, then that's when we would take a look at it.
Yeah, there's not much room to
We have
increase
money.
those rates again.
Mhm,
I mean, it was already, I feel like, a big stretch for us
mhm.
to do that last time.
There are some next 4 years, there are some significant water increases.
How complicated would it be to well, I mean, how complicated would it be to transfer money into the water reserve to cover the credit?
So are you asking for a credit, or would you to pay a check? Two different things.
I was thinking of a credit.
Mhm.
I mean, if everyone if the council thought that a check was the better way to go, I'd go along.
I do think one of the issues we have is the cost of deferred maintenance, and the credit
Yeah.
probably wouldn't help them with
True.
pay for the CNA, et cetera. So it could be a mixture of the two. It could be something else, but I would recommend some dollars. I'm not sure that we would you would probably pay it out of the water fund itself. Out of the contingency inside the water fund is what I would do, because you have an ending fund balance there. That essentially theoretically, these dollars would be held, but or I pay it actually out of water, wastewater and storm drain. A mixture of the three, but yes.
Yeah, I would give that to staff to make a recommendation, but
I
I agree with Eric, it should not be coming from affordable
Oh,
housing.
I don't think that,
Right.
yeah, any sense at all for
I think,
or paltry affordable housing.
I personally think that they should just be, for lack of a better way of putting it, cashed out. That way, if we give them partial cash and partial credit, and they use that cash for those expenditures, and they need more, then they're not in a position, they're actually in charge of their own destiny with that money, instead of having to come back and ask us again, is it possible to get another 20,000 for this purpose? Or whatever the case may be. So I kind of,
You're thinking cash out.
yeah, and just let them be in charge of their own destiny.
If that occurred, if we were to take that 146,000, sounds like what I'm hearing you saying, and kind of repaying what has been overpaid. Is that reasonable to expect that that money could be used for the capital needs assessment and?
It would, yes, absolutely, because that would be plenty of money, because it's between that 15 and 25. I just haven't received the bids yet. What I want you guys to know is Dan and I discussed this thoroughly, is that it doesn't matter to us where it comes from. The credit probably wouldn't help us that much, because we would have a credit for a long time and we wouldn't be able to recover. You know, we wouldn't be able to do anything except for just have a credit, and we would just be building on a per month basis and only be able to use money per month. But we did get excited about, our partnership with working with a grant, because it's still a form of payment. And I know you don't want it to come out of the affordable housing, but I can promise you, we have more than $149,000 of work to be done at our property, and we would still be a great candidate to receive a grant. I don't want more. I'm not asking for more. I'm just saying that would be what we're after right now, is more of a little bit of help with some cash to get the CNA so that we can move forward with whatever you decide. But we do thank you very much for everyone agreeing that we should be made whole, because that's what we would like to.
I didn't make my comment with the caveat that you do not apply for an affordable housing grant. This is a different conversation than affordable housing grant. Like that's an application if there's needs above and beyond what, that making you whole.
That's
Okay, for some,
for next year.
oh, okay, so.
Doing it the same way too.
So how I understood, Dan and I both understood it that, okay, you guys will help us with the grant because I'm still gonna, I was planning on doing my application, which is why I went on and on and on about the condition of the property. Because that application talks specifically about what you would use that grant for. So that's was my spiel on the condition of the property and getting those numbers together was for that grant, thinking that was part of being made whole.
No, I think
Two different things.
talking about,
I didn't understand it that way.
We all agree.
Even,
Oh,
yeah,
even after this, I mean, if there was some partial credit, some cash making up for the overpayment, that would allow you to do these things, to get the middle unit back online, to get the capital needs assessment going.
Mhm.
And yes, I think that then we can look at that grant for whatever might be needed for the.
thank you.
the grant on the 20th.
It's due on I thought it was the 23rd, but I'm almost done. I'm just waiting next week. We're meeting the contractors on the 8th.
Really coming up. And I think the restitution, I don't think any of us are seeing that as part,
Okay.
as connected to the grant.
Making that clear because I misunderstood completely. Dan and I both misunderstood that. So I think that I think my question moving forward is a lot about what Mr. Hayes is saying is this is how you bill. But wanting to understand, are we still going to be at that 400 unit, 436 units? And that I don't know if that's going to change. I don't know if it's going to stay the same. Will we continue to be penalized every month for anything over that 400? Because we will be penalized every single month for eternity. So it's just kind of about finding that balance on how the billing is going to be. And I think it doesn't just affect us, but I think you guys talked earlier today about changing the building code or something like to about affordable housing and that you're going to put some type of language in there, which probably relates to this as well. So I understand what you're trying to do. I just want to understand it. So I know what to expect in the future when it comes to the billing.
So you're concerned but at 3/4 inch pipe, then you're going to have really huge costs per cubic foot over and above the 400.
Yeah, I know that per month is gonna go down, which is gonna help us a lot because the way I see it is $3,500 a month is a whole new flooring for a rental. That's just how I see the money. So it's gonna help us significantly and get us caught up on some past due bills that we need to pay. But I'm just wanting to understand for future, as you increase.
Not perfect.
So I mean, I'm a person who has to understand things. It's just how my brain works. So I just was curious about if that's going to change or is it going to stay the same and this is just how it is? And if it is, it is. I just don't know because that question has been
My
answered.
recommendation again would be to a 3/4 inch meter. We keep the same 400 cubic feet
Okay.
the way it is now, and then it gets billed like that. And like I said, and as Eric has said, that gets it down to it's very close to that percentage.
Okay.
So
Okay.
Some kind of custom.
unless we do that, or unless
makes sense.
something, I mean, it wouldn't be necessarily true 5 months ago before they fixed all the leaks and stuff. That would not necessarily be true. But under the current situation, that is true.
Right, because we're being very careful on that.
And you have a plan for continuing.
We do it every month and
You've started to do it every month.
yes, it's instantly when I came down in November, when I thought we had a busted pipe with water pouring out of it, because I just didn't realize. And that's when we started digging into this. But yes, and I'm very involved in this property. And we very much, I totally see the mismanagement, which is why I've been here and why I'm on site and why I'm showing up is because of all the mismanagement, because we're working really hard to correct it all.
And I think one thing too for the management company, when the bills come in, as soon as you see it, if you feel that there's a significant difference, it needs to be brought to the city's attention.
We're doing one thing beyond that. Every week, my on-site manager goes on and checks ION. Every week, every single week. And every time I talk with him, I'm like, how are we doing on our water? And he goes, it went up a little bit. And I said, Herschel, we had a new move-in. We're going to have more usage. Oh, that's right. We had a new move-in. We're going to have more usage. I mean, it all coincides. Because we had a vacant unit for about 6 weeks. So the billing was low, then it missed a month, then it, so it went up because we have more usage. So we are very strictly communicating about that. I have my on-site maintenance going in and doing inspections to make sure we're doing new supply lines, we're doing new wax rings, we're doing new toilet guts, we're checking everything. We're doing everything because we're very thoughtful about not wasting water. So I didn't understand when you said the 97-inch, the 400 was included in what you said. I just didn't hear that part. So my apologies. But yes, I agree with that. I have no issues with that. Now that I know the answer.
Can we ask staff to look at this going to the 3/4 rate and retroactive? And the number I've heard is 146,000, and at least a good portion of that in cash so that they can do some of these other things. And what recommendations that money is going to come from.
Yeah, so what my recommendation would be, so we can administratively do the 3/4 inch. So we'll do that immediately. So that we'll set the system up. What I will do is Jamie and I will get together, we'll talk a little bit. And then what I'll have to do is I'll have to come back to the council in May for a budget amendment. And that will be what essentially the recommendation will be, where the money would come from. My guess right now is that it would actually come from the water fund. So it would be from the water fund back to cap.
And hopefully you get the CNA, you get the other unit line.
Yep.
And we can address the next issue of.
Yep. And we're doing that alongside OHCS and that grant for the purpose of not wasting money on that one unit if we can't save it. So we're just being thoughtful about that. And if some of this is a credit, it's okay, because you know what I mean? We still could use the credit if you want to break it up into part credit.
I'd rather,
So we'll,
agreeing with Deanna now, I'd rather see it just a little.
we'll talk and we'll hammer out the details on that. We'll settle that number, determine how we do it or how they best see fit. And then we'll bring back a budget amendment to the council.
I won't be offended.
And you're going to have your community grant turned in as.
Yes, yeah, I'm almost done with it. I'm just waiting for the numbers.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Find the 146,000, but say complete credit for it.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, anything else? Have enough direction?
I have enough direction. Thank you.
Your time, everybody. It's so appreciated.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have Chamber of Commerce quarterly report.
And that'll be with Jim Pano presenting.
See if Amber was on. I don't see her.
See her.
Yeah, I just text her and let her know that we're out. She might be joining us. Evening.
Good evening.
Mayor, councilors, staff. We're here to report on the Q2 DMO work. Just a quick reminder, Q2 for us is October, November, and December. So Sierra's going to give us a quick highlight of all the things we've been working on during that time frame, and then we'll be able to go in and review the reports that we've provided for you that are in accrual based. So we'll get into that afterwards, and I hope that you guys are liking that new format. But we'll talk about that when we get to it. I first wanted to go and let Sierra run her presentation.
So as Jim mentioned, hard to update October through December. We're just gonna do an overview of some preliminary stats and projects that went on. So in quarter two, an update from our North Coast partnership. They we're working on some content creation throughout the whole county. So some in Astoria, some in Seaside, and some in Cannon Beach, depending on when each town has a big event. So even though it was at the very end of Q1, a videographer group that was hired by North Coast Partnership came in and took some footage of the Earth and Oceans Festival that we'll be able to use in future marketing for any of the arts festivals, but also at Earth and Oceans, of course. And then they also did some video content during the holidays. And we also worked with that videographer to create one of the TAC videos for the lamp lighting. So we got a lot of those community moments that we were really happy to utilize them because they were going to be in town anyway. So it just made sense to continue on with that partnership. Some of the stewardship projects that we're working on, a stewardship project with the community focus, we did call for art submissions. And that was beginning the process of expanding the art section in the experience guide. So if any of you guys have seen the new experience guide that came out about a month ago, there's a new art section in the front. And so what I did was I put out a press release that was like all the art galleries and any art person in town and in the region that are represented in those art galleries, that I just invited them to submit some art. And what I did was I put those in a survey essentially and got with our board and marketing committee and they rated them. And then we observed how many pages that we had to place this art. And it was about 20 pieces of art that we placed. We had over, I think, 30 artists submit, and we received, I believe it was about 92 pieces of art that were rated, and again, 20 were published. So I was really excited to take a new spin on the experience guide, and I'm going to catch myself, and not even really a new spin, but almost like a nod back to some of the Cannon Beach magazines that were in the early 2000s and in the 80s, just really celebrating our community back into that the art lens, and really excited about that because I think the definitions from Travel Oregon and Aqua and a lot of missions is really trying to connect the community with our locals that are visiting the art galleries, but also with a lot of our visitors to enhance that relationship so that way it doesn't feel so transactional, to kind of combat that feeling of, hey, there's a lot of visitors in town in the summertime, but hey, but they're excited about the product that I'm making and the art that is here. I think that's a goal for all of us, right? And then one of the stewardship projects with an environmental focus, we're just continuing the social media messaging with ocean safety around king tides in Q2 and also with wildlife etiquette. And you'll see some of the results of that in the next few slides. So some of our digital outlets, this one's from Facebook. We did see from Q1 to Q2, the reach was up a little bit. A lot of it actually was 630%. We were more active on social media with promoting the Stormy Weather Arts Festival. So we're really excited about that. We also had a few of our reels around stewardship and wildlife that you'll see in the next slide just take off a little bit more. We also had more link clicks, and that was directly drawn to stormy weather, and then some more profile visits, folks following the page. Some of the stewardship messages that I mentioned. So we have our highest performing social post on Facebook for the quarter, and then the second highest, which was also a stewardship message, and then a king tide stewardship message focus. So the three good examples. Again, there's an inspiration one that was the highest, second highest, that stewardship message of telling folks that, hey, you're going to start seeing the elk in our community more and more. Please respect your distance, respect them with your distance. And then also the king tides message of, hey, here's some key things to know about king tides. We know that they're really cool to observe. And also on that same note, they can be really dangerous. So just trying to continue that message, and we'll see that same message performed really high on Instagram. And one of the cool things on Facebook and Instagram that I observed throughout the whole post was a lot of partners, like local partners and regional partners, we're all talking about king tide safety messages. And so I really felt that that message went even further because everyone was aligned with, hey, we're excited about king tides again, and also they're dangerous. Please respect the ocean. No, good observation tips when king tides are coming for the weekend. And so we really saw that message go a little bit further because it seemed like a lot more brands and DMOs and regional DMOs were aligned. So we were really excited about that. Moving on to the Instagram. Same thing, we're up a little bit from the previous quarter. Again, just some of that was due to stormy weather as we had a lot more clicks in this quarter on the Instagram. And then a handful more follows. Onto the content. There was a Northern Lights sighting in October. So of course had to share that with the folks and capturing Haystack Rock in that. So that was our highest performing photo of the quarter. And then we also see the next one is a king tide stewardship message focus, was our second highest performer. That was a reel and that was a video. So showing in the video, it's not going to play, but this is just a screenshot of we're on the steps, we're far back, and then it pans up to the rock as the tide's coming in. And again, it's the same message that was on the Facebook, just two different assets to send that message out on our platforms. And then you'll see the elk inspiration again. That was another stewardship message that performed. And then our website for Q3, we did see some of our users and visits down from Q1. That's expected as it really correlates with, folks getting back into school and just that seasonal shift in that. But our top pages were tide charts, as always, hotels and restaurants, things to do. And then the Stormy Weather Arts Festival, again, performed really well. And we can look at the correlation between social media, website views, and then also there was a good amount of people in town that weekend. Some of the visitor center stats for Q2, and we also see this correlation where there's a little bit, the visitation was down in the information center itself, which again, as expected for going into Q2. Welcomed about 2,500 folks, answered about 1,600 calls. 42 of those were related to lodging, mailed 220 visitor guides. And so we see the visitor guides slowing down a little bit too, again, as we're nearing the end of the calendar year and folks are really starting to ask for that, the next visitor guide so they can get it and see all the cool photos and all the things, folks really like to collect those year over year. So we saw that go down a little bit, and that correlates too with our stock as we are running out of visitor guides as well as we would hope for the end of the year. Cool. So those are our updates for Q2.
Anyone have any questions? Okay, thank you.
Jeff? All right. Let's see Amber, who I was hoping she could be here and be online to answer any of the backside questions to our new accounting practices for you guys, but I'll if she jumps on, let me know and we can ask her. Did want to also start this off by saying you guys asked for us to bring these in an accrual format for you so that it matches how you guys follow your financials. This is an absolute new process for me, but Amber was more than happy to jump in and do a lot of work to upgrade how we're doing our accounting so that we can pull these reports in an accrual format. And we spent a lot of time going back and forth on the details and the work that goes into that, because it's a whole nother layer of tracking and billing and paying bills and putting that into the system to make those reports function in an accrual format. So we put in the work and there's probably more work to do. And I was kind of hoping Amber would be here so she could fill you in on the details of the extra work, but it's been a good process. And like I said, we've done a lot of work that provide you these accrual reports. Again, this is going back to the Q2, so that's what we're reporting on. We also provided the Q1 in the accrual format because we felt like that was important for you to have consistency. amongst the reports that you're looking at. And that way we were consistent as well on how we're given those. So I can dive into the first quarter a little bit if you like, but I really the second quarter.
Well, I would just ask that for maybe some proofreading, because the quarter, it says June 2024 through September 2024. Wouldn't that be July?
Yeah. July.
And then there was another one like that later on, but we'll get to it when we get to it.
Well,
you know.
Yep. So as part of the process too, when we were going through that, it became, for us, looking at the city reports and what we've done in the past, we decided it was probably important to do a summary page, to outline the different areas of concern that might show in the report that you would ask questions of. So we wanted to be a little more proactive and provide that information to you. So we really broke that into the expense analysis, and I worked with Amber to kind of review all of these. And every time there was a question, we wanted to dive into it and be able to provide you the answer to those questions ahead of time. The biggest one that we saw that really jumped out was the annual budget in the marketing area. The overall budget was correct, but the category numbers not matching what we had put for the marketing budget this year. And that, I believe, goes back to our previous accountant, or something wasn't correct in that. We discussed updating that for this report, but we felt it was more important to report as it actually was at the end of December, but to let you know that those are going to be updated and corrected in the third quarter report. So the actual budget numbers for each category will match. And then kind of a follow-up that came after I sent the reports in was a definition page for all the different categories. And on that, I put in the actual numbers for the budget, or the budget, true budget numbers that we're working from, with the actuals for the end of quarter two. So I wanted to provide that information because I figured you guys might want more information on the details of that. So I'm, again, trying to be proactive and get you the information so that you have it ahead of time rather than as we go. Any questions on that so far?
I have just regarding what Counselor Kerr said on the June, with the June date. If dates were plugged to pull these reports, I would go back and pull that first quarter report to make sure that it is through,
right,
for that first quarter. Because those numbers are probably wrong. I don't like to use the word incorrect. We use the word incorrect.
I'm
shifting gears over here. Sorry.
I'll go back and double check that with her, but I'm going to our discussions assume that that's probably a grammatical error and not a calculating error.
It's on the next page as well, so.
Yeah, we probably just pulled that.
Use QuickBooks.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
I think the numbers could be wrong then too.
yeah, well, I will mark that and double check it, and we'll get back to you.
And the marketing other category is getting redistributed to other stuff that have titles on them.
Yes, Amber is not a fan of other as a category. And
miscellaneous.
And I think we all can agree on that. So there are some charges that when we set this up, going back several years, we had the main categories that we were using didn't fit into those categories we put into other. Because distribution costs and costs that really didn't fit in those categories needed to go somewhere. So we're reallocating those to categories that they should be in and discussing. That'll be part of next year's budget plan. What we do have another that category should be and making sure it's appropriate for the marketing committee.
So your board of directors is getting this in accrual also. Are they making the switch?
We haven't discussed whether they want to see that in accrual. They're getting a very similar set of books because we're adjusting all of our finances across. If they still want to see it in a cash base, then we'll continue in a cash base for them. We actually haven't talked about that yet. Our focus for this was making sure you guys got what you needed here. Another thing in the other category, and this was pointed out, we looked at it, the clarity of payment from last fiscal year, the second half of that payment came into this fiscal year. And since we'd already done our taxes and stuff fiscal year, so that's gonna provide or inflate that category budget for the rest of the year. So that would be off because of that carry forward of that funding that was paid this year rather than last year. So just wanted to make you aware of that as well.
When you received the invoice for clarity of place, and maybe you just said this, I'm sorry, but did you get that in two separate invoices?
Yes.
Okay, but you knew what that was going to be, so on an accrual basis, you could have entered the whole quote and then paid from there.
Yeah, and that's the new system that Amber's put in place beginning in December, so that we do enter the invoices and bills as we receive them and then pay them as they need, and then they get accounted for at the appropriate time. That's the process that Amber's put in place to make sure that we can do the accrual based.
A lot more accountability that way.
And I noticed that you, in your payroll and benefits, you talk about paying benefits for someone who no longer works for you, but why would you pay a monthly benefits bill with an ex-employee included? Or did they opt for COBRA and then not pay, or what happened?
That was an error on the insurance company's side. We reported that employee left the company, but they didn't take them off of our rolls, and we paid for a couple of months. And then I noticed that it was still high because we were looking at the reports. Followed up with them several different times to get that corrected. And they finally have corrected it, but those payments still went out, and they're gonna correct it coming up. So it'll be the third quarter, possibly the fourth quarter before that correction is accounted for.
Aren't you showing it as a receivable then? Because that's money that's going to be coming in,
I will ask Amber that question.
And while we're on benefits, you have benefits tied into your salaries and wages, correct?
Yes.
And that should be its own category. So we can actually see what you're paying in wages and then what you're paying in benefits. So it would be good to see that broken out as well.
Yep. We can make that adjustment for sure. All right, so the next category was the general and admin expense part, where we noticed there were some different parts that were out of line. Of course, the accounting and bookkeeping, we've taken on additional costs, paying out our previous accountant and taking on Amber and having her do some cleanup work. So that's going to run a little high this fiscal year. But I think
we can all agree that we're better off for it. The next category is dues and subscriptions. We had previously had Monday.com, which is a platform we use to organize our workload and their staff work. And how it really provides us an opportunity to more organized and efficient as an organization. That wasn't in the dues and subscription category previously, but we've added it into that. So that's gonna, that was part of Amber's adjustments. And so that made an increase in the dues and subscriptions category. And that was the biggest portion of that.
What category did it come out?
Previously, we had initiated that to be a board platform for us to share documents, information with boards, committees, staff. And
So is the board.
it was part of a board expense, but that's not how it's being used. And so being as it is a subscription service, it moved down to dues and subscriptions.
Back to marketing really quick. Sorry, on the earned media, earned usually means that it's an income and paid means it's an expense. And what is that earned media for?
So I'll jump in on that. So earned media is essentially, a lot of it is for like familiarization tours. So essentially, if you're going to be hosting a media stay, and like traditionally, that's what it would be. You would bring someone to town who's maybe a travel writer, right? And then they would experience town, experience something like a certain event, right? Let's take like Stormwater Arts Festival. So you bring a writer to town, experience the arts festival. They'll do a ride about it, take some photos, and they'll go and pitch it to a magazine for an editorial pickup or to Travel Oregon. So essentially, like, we're earning that media coverage, but we're not necessarily the editorial or it as an advertisement anywhere, if that makes sense. So how we've been using it this year is not necessarily doing so much of that, because I think we all know we get a lot of media coverage and trying to back off on some of that. So this year, like, we hosted a tour group from Belgium that Travel Oregon and Aqua were taking all around Oregon. And we hosted them like for a lunch and talked to them, and they toured Cannon Beach and visited a lot of the art galleries. And so from that, they're setting up tour schedules for folks back home, you know, to come visit Oregon and have Cannon Beach and the coast, like, be in the stops of that. So really using it more strategically to align with some of our partnerships versus just bringing people to town to have them go pitch a story.
I think your confusion might be that it's an industry term inside a financial thing, so
Right.
it makes it confusing because
It's a PR expense.
Well, I
understand
understand,
the phrase earned media is an industry term for this particular type of
and I do understand that.
Oh, okay.
It is confusing.
being inside the.
So that's essentially, yeah, you like earn coverage versus paying for the coverage in a roundabout way.
I just wonder if the name of the expense shouldn't be changed to something that's just a little more friendlier. That maybe that's just me and I'm being,
A little more financially, in a financial.
yeah, like a public relations expense.
We will take that back to the committee and discuss it and see if we can update it.
Thank you. Great explanation.
Great. So as you can see, the revenues were up, our expenses were down for the quarter. If you look at the report here, you have actually two reports. One is just the quarter itself. And we broke that out because you guys have asked for that many times, to have the visitor, the marketing, and then have the combined. I will point out that the combined budget is still our old budget from the previous account, in which it is just spread out evenly across the year. So it's not specific to when expenses and income. So an even expense budget. In our budget process this coming year, we're gonna really deep dive into that and set those when they actually come out month, which quarter. So the quarters will line up more with the budget and the budget and the actual quarters will line up better next fiscal year. Was there any questions on the quarterly report? The next page is the year to date, which again ends at the end of December. Again, we broke this out. It's rule-based, of course. We have the visitor, the marketing TDF, the combined budget. And then we also compared it to the annual budget with the percentage of that annual budget. So that you can see that we have the whole year up to that point and how it compares to our overall budget. And, you know, one of the interesting and kind of odd numbers is if you look at the net income fluctuation in the bottom right corner, that's pretty extreme as a budget, as a percentage. I think that really shows the fluctuation of the income stream that we receive. We get a lot in the first quarter. It really dips down in the second quarter and stays down in the third quarter, pumps back up spring. But our expenses fairly flat across there. So it's going to show a really big fluctuation of income versus expense in each quarter. But I really believe that we're managing that well and the incomes are high and the expense is low. So we'll at the end of the year come out in a real positive fashion.
And on your DMO year-to-date financial performance, again, it says from October 24th, 2024 through December. Wouldn't that be July?
Yes, it would.
You're good. Thanks.
And I really suspect those are typos. We will double check for certain.
Will you let us know when you have that answer?
I absolutely will.
Thank you.
Then the final page. Yeah, I have this right here. Is the reserve balance information, and we do have the explanation of that as well. One of the things that Amber really thought was important is to put explanations of the different items, so it's very clear, and anyone that sees these reports that we present to you can better understand how that works. And I hope that is a helpful addition for really everyone. I found it helpful, and I hope you do too.
So reserve fund balance at the end of the calendar year is 173.
Yeah.
And that reflects the looks like $62,000 that you've taken out of the reserve.
Yes.
So there's still another 62,000 to come out of that for what you've budgeted out of the reserve fund.
Yeah, if you go back to the quarterly report at the bottom, there's a reserve fund explanation of where we started. The income that came in minus the expenses for that. It also includes the reserve fund transfer. that will bring you to the 173, 114.06. So that's explained here, and it's just noted on the balance sheet as the 174 amount.
At the end of this fiscal year, you'll essentially have $100,000 in the reserve fund. Well, a little more than that, $110,000. Is that what?
Well, I think if you just continue straight across, that would be the case, but as we know, we budgeted fairly conservatively.
So there would be some carryover.
There's going to be more income from the tax funding than what we budgeted for. We've been working very hard to cut down our expenses because we know that we're pulling from the reserves currently to make our numbers. So there should be a much larger amount that then would go into the reserves at the end of the year. And I'll revert back to Amber for how that process works. But certainly it would go back into the reserves because.
So some of the reserve you're taking out will go back in is kind of what I'm hearing, but I'm just surprised to see you taking $124,000 out of the reserve fund on top of what you've budgeted as an expectation from the TLT funds. Was there a reason you thought that was needed this year?
Well, that was the budget that we addressed and put in when we did this budget last fiscal year, because we were looking at reducing our number. This goes back to previous fiscal years. Before we went with the 503, which is the actual number that we received from the city, we were basing our budget number off of the city budget number. And if you go back a few different meetings, I had told you that the city budget number is much higher because it has a number in it that is budget in excess of taxes, I believe is what it's called. If you look at this year's fiscal budget on your side, that's over $600,000 in your budget. So we know that that's not an accurate number for us to use back of fiscal year, use the actual number. So we're only using the actual number that we received as a budget number moving forward, because that number we know we received. And therefore, since we were marketing at a higher level based on a previous budget number that wasn't fairly accurate for us, we decided that it was better to go with a safer number that we knew we could count on. And so the reason we changed that is because the budget was so high, and we overinflated that for a few years because we were following that number. We didn't back out the revenues in excess of taxes. I'm not even sure what that means in your guys' budget, but it pertains to us specifically. I believe that's protection so that you guys don't have to have interfund transfers to make changes to the budget. But that's for you to ask on your end. But we're trying to be very safe about that. And when we were using those old numbers in the previous years, then we were basing our marketing efforts on inflated numbers. Well, once we realized that through this year, we're trying to back down again, but we still had a lot of things in the works that we needed to do. And so we needed to pull from the reserves to cover all the work that we had planned. We're doing our best to cut that down, to save money every possible way we can through the budget. And I think at the end of the year, we won't be reserves, as we'll have additional income and we will have cut that down. So I'm looking forward to being able to provide a year-end report that shows that. But we have to get through the year to know what that is.
I guess I'm surprised to see you using them because, I mean, you made the note earlier that, about the importance of maintaining a reserve to even out those cash flow issues. Or even a downturn where we actually might need to pump things up a little bit more. And I'm concerned that it's not sustainable. I mean, so much of what's been added has been payroll. But I think we're gonna ask you for some more historical things because I don't think we've ever spent this much money. In fact, by substantially. Except I know it seems like I recall there's last year, $160,000 from the reserve fund that was used to balance your budget. I'm pulling that out of a memory, which isn't always great, but. I mean, you have any concerns about?
Well, that's why we're working so hard to be ultra conservative and cut down our expenses. To get back to a zero balance budget because we want reserves to go into reserves. Right? We're not looking to spend every penny we get. We want to have the program that functions and is viable for the future. It's, you know, we went a couple of years with an inflated budget and now we're trying to correct that. And that's going to take, you know, last year really showed us that it was inflated budget and we didn't have processes in place to correct that. We knew that it was going to be that, but we didn't actually move money the way it's supposed to. This year we have those in place. We still know our budget is not balanced yet and we need to move those funds. So we're doing that appropriately. And we're cutting our costs down and heading towards that zero balance budget. And that's going to be done through the budget process this year. That's really a main focus of the board and our plans for next fiscal year. To get everything back in line.
And did you say that a minute ago that you're paying these reserves back effectively at the end of the year?
Yeah, whatever excess funding there is, whatever we can save on the expense side and whatever additional income, whatever that number is at the end of the year, we'll definitely move into the reserve.
So in your first and second quarter, those are down quarters or well, I guess the first quarter wouldn't be.
First quarter is up, yeah.
But second, third quarter, you're going down. So your cash flow is less. You need to dip into those reserves. But at the end of the day, it all is seemingly coming out in the wash. You're putting that money back in your reserves. You need to use those reserves to get you back to the next place. And I understand what you're saying about getting back to a zero balanced budget. But I think that helps clear up a couple of Councilor Hayes' questions is that, yes, you're using this money, but you're using it because you need the cash. Correct?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I don't know. I look at the annual budget and it's with the $124,000 reserve that's added to budget. It's all accounted for with and showing a $669 loss. So we're paying it back out of the $669 loss.
That's not going to be an actual number at the end of the year. That's
it's not
a number.
But I mean, you budgeted to spend more than the whole thing.
Yep. Right. Any other questions about that?
Anybody have anything else?
No, I just would be really excited to have your person who did this next time.
Oh, I was hoping she would be here too. Something must have come up.
So,
yeah. I do have another aspect of the contract that I would like to bring up that is in there. It says the industry update. One of the things that Bruce had asked and was in the contract is for us to let you know how the industry's doing and if there's any foreseeable concerns that might impact tourism. So I thought it important to address a couple of things that we've heard. Well, first of all, we want to make sure you guys all saw the new magazine because that's positive for us to get out to everybody. But I've been talking to the hoteliers and getting out and trying to get an idea of how things have gone, especially given spring break. And what I've heard a lot from various hoteliers, small to big, spring break was fairly soft. That can be attributed to a few things. It's pretty easy for us to identify. There's nice powder on the mountain during spring break. A lot of people are going to go do that instead. Our weather was particularly rainy and not so great, but those few really nice days we had turned out pretty good. That being said, that's kind of a normal spring break given the weather conditions. We know that weather is a big factor for our visitation. The interesting thing that I heard multiple different locations is that our Canadian visitors are not coming. So they didn't come during spring break. Several hoteliers told me they're canceling for summer. So that is a concern, and I would contribute that to the political climate and all the things going on in that area. So I just wanted to point that out, that these are things I'm hearing, and so you guys can be aware and just kind of monitor your expectations, I guess. That's what I heard. We always hope for a good season, and we'll do our best to make sure we have one.
And it's not an issue that's unique to Cannon Beach.
Oh, no. Yeah. All right.
Thanks.
All right. You guys all happy with the new look?
In the accrual, yeah. It's not all the way there, but it's getting there.
Well, I would love to hear your recommendations if there's things you think we can.
I mean, that's why I'd like to, when she comes next time, or your person, that would be very helpful.
I would be happy to set up a meeting and we can talk about that directly with her if you'd like.
I think there's going to be some other things we're going to ask for that provide a little bit more historical look so that we're not just looking at a couple of quarters or year to date.
Sure.
But
again, this was our Q2 report. So if you want, whenever you want to dive into that, let us know and we can plan for it.
It's very nice to see. Essentially the visitor center separated from the marketing. I think makes it easier for everybody to understand what's going on.
Yep. You guys asked for that plenty of times. I just wanted to make sure that was part of a standard report. Great. Thank you.
Okay, next on our agenda is the Pacific Power LED streetlight program offer.
Okay. In January of this year, Pacific Power reached out to the city to see if we were interested in taking advantage of the LED streetlight conversion program they currently have going. At the March 11, 2025 council work session, staff and Pacific Power presented the details of the conversion and the associated cost. Funding support is available to the city based on a grant type program. However, there is a fast approaching deadline for us to submit our request for this funding. Based on the citizen advisory group working on a proposal for the city council to get Cannon Beach fully certified as a dark sky community, the timing for this project and funding could be very beneficial to the city. It is important to note that currently, when a city-owned street light fails, Pacific Power crews replace it with the LED light and fixture that is being proposed in the conversion program. This is because the current fixtures are old and have become obsolete, making parts for repairs unavailable. This means that over time, our community will be fully implemented with this new LED lighting anyway. Therefore, we can take advantage of the conversion program Pacific Power is offering, along with the associated funding support to help offset the cost, or we could go through a slower conversion as lights fail and we absorb the cost within our budget. The new LED lighting will qualify us for a dark sky certification.
Wasn't there also a cost savings to this program if we do the conversions that would take, can't remember, a year or 2 years? 4 years, but with supplementary funding that you mentioned, it would be 2 years that.
Yeah, I don't remember what was in her presentation or if even it even had that full, return on investment.
Yeah.
Or
It was 5 years because Eric, that was 2.5.
Right.
Yeah, with
Without a calc.
He did.
you math, please. I have a question. Where are we at with the discussion of the Gower Street lights? Did Pacific Power come out and take a look at the poles and the fixtures that are on them, and if they can change those over to their dark sky certified ones and take over the management of the ones along Gower Street here?
So those are private lights. They're not owned by Pacific Power. And I think she mentioned to us last evening or last presentation that those poles could be used to just put the fixture head itself on there.
Okay, so is that something that in the request here to authorize essentially giving those over to Pacific Power for management?
I think their program right now is for city or for Pacific Power
Is
lights.
Pacific Power one?
And then we would have to pursue those outside this program.
Okay.
Well, I wish the Kelvins were lower, but I think that since they're going to replace it with those lights anyway.
Yeah.
We really don't have that much choice, and the lights we have, they don't make anymore, so.
Yeah.
We're kind of stuck.
They're being changed out anyway, just organically.
May as well take advantage of the savings.
Yeah.
The grant program and then
Yeah.
savings within, a few years use.
And I did inquire, Councilmember Kerr, about your question in the residential area. If there's a shroud or a shield like
Yeah.
deal, it's not a shroud like on our old lights. It is a one-way directional, so it can block the lighting or direct the lighting on one side, so it's not like the old ones. But it can be done. We pay for that. So we would only want to do that in areas where it's disturbing someone's,
Yeah.
ability to be able to sleep if their window coverings aren't dark
Know
enough.
that it's possible is very important.
Yeah. Mhm.
And is that something that can be added at any time?
It can, yeah. And I told them that, if we were to move forward on this with your approval, that's something I'd like them to be sensitive to. And they do this every day. And so when they're doing it in a residential neighborhood based on where that light pole is positioned, they have a pretty good idea if it's going to be impacting someone's private home based on where that pole sits. So.
Would someone like to make a motion?
I'd like to move to proceed with the program offered by Pacific Power for LED streetlight conversion and authorize staff to pursue the associated funding support.
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Jen.
Counselor Hayes,
Yes.
Council President Kerr,
Yes.
Counselor Ostrander,
Yes.
Counselor Hammond,
Yes.
Mayor Knopf.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Okay, on to the second page. The elected and appointed officials code of conduct.
Ashley, do you want to introduce this?
Hold on a second. I don't think she was just moving over.
Oh,
Now she can probably hear you.
Good evening, council. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Good evening.
All right. So the next agenda item is the code of conduct for an elected and appointed officials. I'm going to take a second to go back in time and talk about the history of this. Back in 2024, under the previous council, we had discussed adopting a code of conduct for elected and appointed officials. Essentially, the city council, you have your rules, your city council rules of procedure that talk a lot about expectations regarding how you interact with each other and staff during council meetings, how council meetings flow, etc. But we realized that your appointed officials didn't have a similar code of conduct. And so we went about drafting a code of conduct that will apply to both elected and appointed officials. For elected officials, this goes along with your rules of procedure. And for appointed officials, this would be the only code of conduct that they have. So the buckets sort of that we're addressing through this is respectful and professional conduct while attending city meetings, representing the city, or otherwise acting in your role as a public official. And then we bulleted some of the city council's expectations for elected and appointed officials when they're acting in their official capacity. The second bucket is to come to meetings prepared. That includes, the council's expectations that if you're coming to a city meeting, that you have, read through the agenda packet, you've asked some questions beforehand, you've noted when you can and can't attend, etc. We also then, I'm going to skip remote attendance at meetings. We then talked about council's expectations regarding the treatment of staff. So, the expectation that everybody treats staff appropriately, that professional criticisms are directed to the city manager, that, the council expects that criticism to be constructive, etc. And then the last two are city council's expectations regarding conduct outside meetings. We had a lot of discussion about, the fact that elected and appointed officials also have private lives. And so our rules of conduct should really be targeted at types of conduct that impact their ability to perform in their city function. And then finally, enforcement. Under your municipal code, it says that appointed officials can be removed for quote unquote misconduct. So part of the reason for adopting these expectations is to establish what kinds of behaviors could be considered misconduct. This came back to the city council recently, and we talked about remote meeting attendance and the city council's expectations that if an elected or appointed official is acting in their official capacity and attending a meeting remotely, the city council's expectations that they'll keep their cameras on and faces visible during all portions of the meeting. So this, again, was talked about in 2024. It was talked about in 2025. And then due to just meeting scheduling, it is coming before you now. So I am available for questions. I also believe that Bruce may have an amendment that he would like you to consider.
Yes, thank you, Ashley. The section under council's expectations regarding treatment of staff. One thing in particular is if there's a counselor that feels there's criticisms that need to be made during a meeting, please direct the comments to me and not a staff member. It can get a little bit heated sometimes, and sometimes we're the messengers, and so just want to direct it this way if you would. And also to make sure that you folks are okay, I have attached a memo, and essentially what it says is if Councilor Hammond asks me for something, then I will get that to her, whatever it is, and give it all to the rest of you also.
Yeah.
So that that that's the way that we would operate, but that way nobody has an advantage over somebody else or anyway, that's what I'm trying to do, to make sure that everybody is as up to speed as everyone else is.
Since you were pointing that out, if it's okay if I think that if any of us came to you and asked a question, that it's fine to share the information. unless we ask for it to be kept private.
Mhm.
And then I feel that we should be able to have that, not that it would be something all, but maybe, I don't know, sometimes I have some dumb questions and I don't want y'all to know that. Oh, I'm asking some questions but so, I mean, sometimes I just think that, and maybe maybe I'm wrong but sometimes we just maybe would like our requests to be private and maybe not. I don't know. Maybe that's just me.
I think I can address that. If there's questions, then that's different. That stays, between us. But if I was to give you, a piece of paper because you want it, explain what you were asking.
Oh, sure.
Then I'm saying that goes to everybody else.
Oh, I agree with that.
But you can come and talk to me about it.
Okay.
And you,
Sure.
I've asked him many dumb questions, so.
Thank you.
I feel bad because I used, Counselor Hammond.
Hey.
as an example. But it's got a little bit nervous.
Oh, no, actually, I think I was probably the last one to ask for stuff, so it was fresh in your mind.
Yeah. But thank you.
Okay, so Ashley?
Yeah.
Going to the very first paragraph here, be respectful and professional while attending city meetings, representing the city. I would add in representing the citizens of Cannon Beach or otherwise in your role as a public official, because that's ultimately who we represent, is the citizens of Cannon Beach. So I would want to have that added in.
Okay.
That first sentence.
But you're not taking out anything. You're just adding that.
Adding that
Okay.
in, representing
how-
the citizens of Cannon Beach.
How about representing the city and its constituents? Would that work?
Yeah,
Yep,
yeah.
good suggestion.
So if there's a motion, we can just have it as amended to approve it as amended.
So I have some concerns of the conduct outside of meetings, about, First Amendment rights of us and our committee members and everything. And where something is inappropriate or offensive, where the line between free speech and something that's offensive to somebody is nowhere in First Amendment does it say you're not allowed to be offensive.
Totally. So that was, you want me to respond to that or do you have more?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
So that was part of the original conversation about this, and it's a very astute point. So, under the First Amendment rights, employees and volunteers don't necessarily give up those rights just because they join the city council or are appointed to a board. However, there are limitations on those rights. And in legal terms, it's called, the Pickering balancing test. So, is the person speaking as a private citizen on a matter of public concern? If those both are answered yes, they have a free speech interest in that. But then there's a third part of that balancing test, and it's whether or not the speech impacts the efficiency or effectiveness of the governing body. Because, as an employer, as a body, we do have to have, some control over what employees, appointed officials, volunteers say in their free time, if it really does impact their ability to perform in their role as a public official. So that language there is designed to comply with the First Amendment. And what would happen in this sort of situation is if there was a complaint about, conduct outside of, a regulated city council meeting or a board of commission meeting, and the council believed that, that speech really impacted the efficiency and effectiveness of the volunteer's ability to perform in that role, then the city could make the decision that the city's interest overrides the private citizen's interest in their free speech. That's a very legal answer to that question, but does that make sense?
Yeah, so is this language the whole, aside from the word Cannon Beach that's in this paragraph, is this essentially copy and pasted from another code of conduct that is in existence somewhere in Oregon with either with the state or with other cities around?
I can't think of one, doesn't mean that it isn't, but it is, I don't believe so. I believe that we wrote this for this code of conduct, keeping in mind the First Amendment issues that you brought up.
Well, actually, when it says conduct outside of meetings can impact a public official's effectiveness in their role or undermine the city's trust, who is the city in that case? Are you talking about the people of Cannon Beach, or are you talking about city staff? Or are you talking about the council? Who is the city?
I mean, the city in this case is the public body. So, but what we'd be looking at is like the person's actual role. So we would be looking at what is the speech, what is that person's role, and how does that speech impact their ability to be effective in that role.
I guess I don't understand what effectiveness and undermine are exactly, because they're such ambiguous terms in a lot, because effectiveness can mean so many things.
Right.
And
I mean,
I don't, and what is undermine? Does that mean, like, let's say somebody on council had a real beef with something the city was doing, and they expressed it in, I don't know, maybe colloquial terms to other people in the city.
Right.
Is that undermining the trust of, I just don't know where this ends or starts. I can't tell.
So, I mean, that's the hard part of trying to write a regulation that regulates speech activity. So you use ambiguous, I would use elastic, because, we want elastic because we want to be able to apply this language to a variety of situations, and it's going to be incredibly fact dependent. So it's going to be dependent, again, like what is the speech, what is the person's role, and how does the speech impact the person's role? And that's the analysis. And if the outcome of that is that the speech activity is so detrimental to the person's role with the city, then I would say that, the city's interest is greater than the person's interest in their free speech. And the city would not have a First Amendment issue with removing that volunteer. But if the speech activity is totally unrelated, it can be offensive speech activity, it can be offensive speech activity that the city just doesn't like, and it's not related to the person's role, it doesn't impact their role, then I would say that we would have some First Amendment concerns. And I can't really write language that's going to address all of the variety of these different circumstances. And so the language that I have included really does track the analysis under the First Amendment. So no, there isn't any, I can't think of a code of conduct that has the same language, but this is the language that is used under the Pickering balancing test to evaluate First Amendment issues.
I'm thinking of like First Amendment general rules, like you're not allowed to incite others to violence. That goes beyond your First Amendment rights. To yell fire in a movie theater goes beyond your First Amendment rights. But those things are so clear cut to me, inciting to violence, yelling fire in a theater. These things I just can't wrap my head around what it means exactly. Is there an example? What's an example?
So for a volunteer, this is more typically used in an employment context. So the Pickering balancing test, which I just described, is used mostly in employment context. So the examples that I'm going to pull up are employment context. So let's say that you have a subordinate employee that, loves their Facebook account, and, they work in a planning department, and on their Facebook account, they, just put a barrage of criticisms of everybody at the city, of all the decisions that the city staff is making in a way, and, also shares, confidential information on their on their Facebook page. That is speech activity. That's activity that's happening in their free time. But that sort of speech activity in their role at the city really undermines their ability to be effective in their job in a number of different ways. So it undermines the work of the city that they're working on. It can undermine their relationships with their coworkers. It can make your coworkers not trust them. So in that situation, we would look at what exactly the speech was, what exactly the employee's job duties are, and how has that speech actually affected the employee's ability to do their jobs. So in that case, the city's interest in being able to have planning department employees who effectively do their jobs may override that person's interest in being able to say all the things that they want to say on Facebook. So that would be an example from the employment context. You can sort of adopt that for your membership on a board.
So you gave two different examples within that of what the speech that particular staff member was making. One was disparaging the city's decisions, and then the other one was sharing confidential information.
Right.
Which one of those is what this is applying to? That you're discussing confidential information clearly is something that you're confidential, but
right.
Disagreeing and disparaging decisions that are made.
Mm-hmm.
Is that?
So, I mean, again, like the language is designed to be elastic. If you want me to think of so let's say that you have a library board. And again, I don't want to say anything that's like too close to home. You guys don't have a library board. That's why I picked it. So let's say that you have a library board and the library board has been delegated authority by the city council, to help select the new site for your library. So you have appointed a board that's going to advise you on selecting the new site for the library. One of your people that you have appointed to that and really active on Facebook, and they just keep, bashing the city for its decisions with the library. And they really are undermining the work of the library committee, which they sit on. They have terrible things to say about the library director, who's the staff liaison with the library, on for that board of commission. It could be that when you evaluate it, that person's speech really undermines the ability of that committee to be effective because the library director is, scared and intimidated and feels harassed and bullied by this person, refuses to go to the meetings, that instead of, supporting and promoting the city's idea to locate a library somewhere, one of your committee members is actually out in the world undermining the city's, chosen policy direction. So in that situation, you as a city council, would you want that person who you have appointed to remain on your board of commission that you have asked to help you select a location for your library? So in a situation like that, you may be able to use this language to say, like, yes, board member, you do have a First Amendment right, but under these facts, how you're using that First Amendment right is making you an ineffective member of our board, and we would like to remove you. So again, like I can't anticipate every single scenario, but what I was asked to do is draft some language regarding off-duty conduct that could get somebody removed. And I wanted to be cognizant of these First Amendment issues. So does that answer your question?
I think the elasticity in this is good and that it works. Where it really becomes a question is when it gets applied. And that's where there has to be a high bar and the facts and it, but to have this language, I don't necessarily see as an issue. I think it's not infringing on anybody's rights.
I think that the part of the wording in this, elected and appointed officials, the elected officials have conduct that we're supposed to maintain already. There's a way of dealing with elected officials, and that's called a recall. You guys couldn't just say Deanna's saying bad things and we're just gonna take her off. The constituents have to vote for that.
Well, I don't think so. I'm not so sure that that's true.
I mean,
I think that this is permitting the rest of the city council to decide that, or maybe I'm wrong.
If,
I don't think
if
that's.
if we made
So-
the case of,
There still have to be a recall vote? Or could the city council decide to remove one other city council member or a planning commission member or?
The planning commission, sure,
They're-
but city council
Right,
wasn't
were
elected by city
elected,
council.
so they
They were
couldn't,
elected by-
so it'd be a recall. So they can't remove another city council member.
So this language specifically says appointed, and appointed public officials serve at the council's pleasure. And so, no, a city councilor cannot be removed for any reason other than a recall. And I believe your charter also has a non-interference provision. But
Okay.
other than that, this only applies to appointed officials.
Well, and it does say elected in here. Several.
It does. I thought it did.
So look at the actual section. So the section that talks
Right.
about
The conduct outside of meetings only talks, I think it only talks about.
if an appointed officials outside
Right,
contact. Yep.
right.
Oh, okay.
is there a reason in that paragraph that we limit the dishonest, illegal conduct? We limit the inappropriate or offensive behavior toward city officials and staff. Does that mean we can be as inappropriate and offensive as we want with the public, with our constituents?
So I put it as examples. So examples of, because I think last time we talked about it, I think we talked again about this provision. And I think we had a similar conversation about wanting it to be more specific. And so I think that's when we added these examples. And I want to be clear that if this is a provision that the council is not interested in, we can also just remove it. So this provision was driven by a council desire to have a standard for when we can remove an appointed official for misconduct for incidents that occur outside of an official meeting. And Eric, to your point, it's not a particularly common, in a code of conduct. It's something specific that the city wanted. So, it's a new council now. I believe that may have occurred during the prior city council. If this isn't something that we want to move forward with, we don't have any sort of obligation to do so.
And I have to say, I do like the part about dishonest or illegal conduct, inappropriate or offensive behavior towards other city officials and staff. I think that part is great to keep in. I just still, you say elastic, I say ambiguous. So I think it could be, it just sort of depends on how you look at it.
Who makes the judgment and I'm just kind of playing devil's advocate but who makes the judgment if it's offensive?
We do.
But what if it's one of us? Y'all do.
No.
No.
So I can answer that. So if
I
it's,
feel like I'm asking silly questions.
if it's one of you guys, what we would be looking at is this or your council rules of procedure. And there is a way for the council to censure or publicly reprimand one of its members. So if you guys, and unfortunately I've been in this situation before, the other city councils, like if there is a city councilor who is acting offensively, for instance, I had a city councilor who was engaging in harassing behavior of city staff. That's a very difficult position to be in because they're an elected official and we don't have our usual, toolbox of options to try to address that. So what the city council ultimately ended up doing was making it clear that they didn't support that sort of behavior by a public censure. And that's really the only tool you have in your toolbox for elected officials who are violating either your rules of procedure that aren't mandated by state law or a code of conduct such as this one.
Go to the well. Yeah.
No, but I went to public school.
So you know what I mean.
So is there a reason that we'd limit that last sentence to city officials and staff?
Is there a reason why there's no mention of the community in any of the stuff? It's just staff.
And I don't
It
think,
didn't stand out to me anywhere else, but anyway, I'm asking kind of a legal question there. And maybe it is a legal question throughout.
Yeah.
But,
Could you add the word citizens to that?
To what?
That last part of that sentence.
Which sentence?
city officials, staff and constituents.
The section we're
Any
talking about.
dishonest or illegal conduct, inappropriate offensive behavior. In other words, if they,
we don't want to say anything.
contract and then, didn't pay it or something,
I
didn't
think
pay
it's
a
just
bill.
because
I mean,
I think that's just because that's where it comes up the most often. That you have an appointed board member who, is harassing and being, offensive towards city staff. And again, you have to be able to make them.
The only specific example I can think of that comes close to this is accusations about someone who's been on the city appointed board and has taken actions to kind of harass or embarrass or a citizen. So
Yeah. I think the key is here, you have to have a nexus to their role with the city. Again, we're talking about conduct by volunteers that happens outside the time that they spend volunteering, so in their free time. And so again, we go through that analysis. Are they speaking as a private citizen on a matter of public concern? And then what's the nexus to their role with the city? And again, I think how it typically comes up is that the offensive behavior is directed towards other public officials and city staff. If they have offensive behavior that's directed towards other members of the community, I think you just have a little bit of a harder time making the nexus back to their role with the city, but that doesn't mean that it couldn't happen.
So would we all agree that none of us would engage in any of these things knowingly? We're not going to knowingly go out and break these rules if we make them.
right. But they're not for us. They're mostly for.
It says elected, and I think the five of us are the only elected people in the city.
This, I thought if an appointed official's conduct significantly impacts their role with the city, we're talking about appointed here.
Well, at the second or the third line, this policy applies to all Cannon Beach elected and appointed officials.
So then why does the second line say if an appointed official's conduct?
Because elected officials cannot be removed. I mean, I can clarify that if we need to, but that's why that section specifically says just appointed officials. And if we need to clarify, only appointed officials we certainly can.
we can't be removed, but is it still inappropriate to have a code of conduct? You're applying a code of conduct to elected officials. I mean, is that a problem?
Is that a question for me?
I think so.
So no, most cities have, either rules of procedure or code of conduct or both. But really what it is sort of what Deanna was saying. It's agreement among its members of how you're going to comport yourself, and what is the enforcement? It's a reprimand. So this is just an agreement amongst yourself, somewhat aspirational. This is how we want to commit that we're going to interact with the staff, how we're going to interact with others, and we're going to interact when we're representing the city. With appointed officials, you have a bigger enforcement arm, which is removal. They serve at your pleasure. If they're not performing in that job, you can remove them. And again, this did start as a code of conduct for appointed officials because you don't have one. If it's too confusing having appointed and elected in the same code of conduct, we can divide them out and then simply just add some of this to your guys' pre-existing council rules of procedure.
So other codes of conduct, do they have a procedure within them of how a grievance is filed? And does that need to be in this somehow?
So I believe you guys have that for appointed officials already in your municipal code. And that's part of how this came up, is that your municipal code says that appointed officials can be removed for quote unquote misconduct after a hearing. So you already have that in your municipal code. And so there were some questions of like, so what does it mean for an appointed official to engage in misconduct? And so part of the point of this was to define, what your expectations are. So when you say, hey, you violated our expectations of your conduct, we can point to something. So I believe that's chapter 2 of the municipal code. I'm sure Jen already has it up.
Jen's not even here.
I'm a little slow today.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's like emailed to me with a link already, but yeah. And so each one of your boards and commissioners have the same language in there. And again, this was an issue that we talked about, and it's trying to get through some of these really difficult, frankly, like difficult legal issues when you're talking about, volunteers' conduct in their free time.
Okay, let's just say that somebody who's appointed on an appointed, committee, commission, behaves in public really bizarrely, like walks around calling other people really nasty names and just behaves, or maybe people who feel politically different than them, they go around calling them horrible things or saying just really offensive things to other citizens, including people who walk by them who also might be, other members of appointed people, anybody who comes into their path. It has nothing to do with city business. They're angry about, let's say, federal politics, okay? National politics, and they're saying these just awful things to everybody who they feel like don't agree with them. But it's offensive what they're saying. They're swearing and stuff. So where does this come in with that?
So we'd have to do the analysis. And what I would say is, what are they saying? And could we make an argument that, it was so egregious that it undermined your trust that they're able to make rational decisions? And then we would have a conversation about the risks and the rewards of, that sort of removal.
So
but
if
again,
they were, okay, all right.
Sorry, Councilor Kerr, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's fine. I guess it just scares me because it's like a slippery slope. If someone's standing there on the corner yelling at people who walk by with a Trump hat on, F you idiot, or you know what I mean? Stuff like that. Now, some people would say that would undermine their ability to do their job on an appointed committee. Other people, but does it, because it's not directly related to the city, and it's, you know what I mean? So how does that?
So the language,
okay.
The language is designed to sort of give you a foothold to have that conversation. It's designed to be able to try to define what is misconduct, which can get you removed. And again, like the language can encapsulate every fact scenario that you're going to have. But what it can do is, establish an expectation and establish a process for you guys to make that decision. And the body who is going to make that decision is you guys. You're going to look at the facts. You're going to say, like, is this action so egregious that I don't trust this person to make really important decisions on behalf of the city? if the answer is yes, then, then we'll analyze if there's risk associated with that. And then, if the city council is willing to assume that risk. And it is, a better analysis for the city when we're talking about volunteers versus, employees, because with employees, we're talking about, removal of somebody's livelihood. The free speech, the balance is a little bit different with volunteers.
And are we thinking about this? So, deeply because we're such a small community? I mean, I'm not saying I agree with a lot of these questions. This conversation is good. We're such a small community that we're gonna know if Johnny sits on this board and is doing all of,
No, I'm doing this, I'm going into all this because the First Amendment is really important.
Yes.
And I believe in it so strongly, and I'm really concerned about anything that I perceive might be an infringement on that. That's,
I don't think the language of this policy is an infringement on First Amendment rights. What would be an infringement on First Amendment rights would be the potential enforcing of this policy. So that's where the decision is made.
Yeah.
In the enforcement of it. And
I agree with you, Lisa.
if you had a council who had particular leanings politically, they would find what that person said really offensive. Whereas if you had a council that had other political leanings, they might not find it so offensive. So what you're doing is you're leaving it to the proclivities of the council to decide whether they, or, someone is not offended by FU and somebody really is for religious reasons or whatever else. So I just, that's what's makes me nervous about this. I'm not talking about the.
Sure, Ashley would have something to say about all of that.
Well, and I don't think that, I think that Ashley has explained very well, where she's going, and I don't think that it's going to, I still understand Councilor Kerr's concerns. And I think maybe we should take everything that Ashley has said and take it home and think about it and see how we can, I personally would rather wait to move forward until till we all feel comfortable with verbiage that's on here instead of, because it is, I have First Amendment written on my little notes, and it was one of the first notes that I wrote. So,
I'd be curious to see some codes of conduct from other jurisdictions. That would be interesting to me, how they deal with this kind of thing. Do you have that available, or?
I can look. So, this one was originally based on one that the city of Fairview City Council had for themselves. So, that one was just for the city council. I don't know personally, I can't think of a client that I've worked with that did a code of conduct for appointed officials. I can certainly ask around my office. And if we are going to table this, an important question I have is that there seems to be some confusion regarding elected and appointed officials.
Yeah.
If the council would like, we can have two separate ones. I can incorporate the items that just apply to the elected officials into your, current rules of procedure for the city council, and then we can have a separate document that just applies to appointed officials. Would that be more helpful?
It would to me, because I got so confused even reading it, where jumping back and forth within, one section, not really sure. Even still, what the intent is.
Okay, does the rest of the council feel that way as well?
I do, yeah. But I also, other people can answer. I had another question going back to something else, but everyone else wants to weigh in on that.
I'm good. I agree with Lisa.
Having two separate documents.
Yes.
Okay.
Having what?
Two separate
sections, one for.
Oh, one for appointed, one for.
Buffing up the one that we
Yeah,
have for.
I think what's what is critical here is that we do get something as far as appointed officials, code of conduct. That's where this whole thing started. And even if we take out, if we want to keep hashing the code of conduct outside of meetings out, I think that's fine, but we don't have a code of conduct for appointed officials, and we should.
That's fine.
There should be a standard, there should be a process, if they fail to meet that standard. And I think that's where this conversation started, so I just hate to see this get, caught up in, so we're not gonna do anything because we had to figure out this code of conduct.
Nobody said we're not going to do anything. We said we'd like to think about it and, see some other jurisdictions' codes of conduct, how they word it, to see what the differences might be and to.
But would you be comfortable with just taking out the whole section about conduct outside of meetings?
No, I mean, if, I don't think everybody wants that taken out. So that's my sticking point. The rest of it, I'm great with, really. That's the only part that I have the issue with.
That's my point. I would rather, move forward and get a code of conduct in place for appointed officials, even if we have to take that out. And we can keep talking about that if we.
Right, but this
if we're
kind of
uncomfortable with
morphed
it.
into a dual purpose code of conduct where it should be split apart.
Which we've all agreed.
Right, yeah.
Already, yeah.
And as
Okay.
she said, she could do that.
So let me reiterate kind of the direction here is that we're going to take the parts that pertain to the city council and include them into your pre-existing rules of procedure. That's one. Step two is that do we just want to remove that section regarding behavior outside of council meetings and then adopt, essentially I'll bring back a code of conduct for the appointed officials without that section in it.
Before we discuss that, I think Eric has one more.
I think it's essentially fall within that conduct outside of meetings, but I guess it applies to the whole thing. The removal from office thing, I pulled up our city code for the planning commission, just and it doesn't really line out a procedure for filing grievance. It just kind of makes an assumption that somehow a grievance has been filed with the body, and then a hearing is to be held at the council level. And I don't know if the procedure needs to be in the code, like who is permitted to be filing, who can say that there's an issue. Can it just be some random person that doesn't live in the community? It doesn't have to be a voter. Does it have to be a staff member? Does it have to be?
Yeah. So what it says, just for everybody's knowledge, so, I'm looking at, I think the design review board, but it's the same language. It says, a member of the board may be removed by the city council. So to answer your first question, it is the city council after a hearing for misconduct or for the non-performance of duty. A member who's absent then we go to absences. So, how this typically plays out is that it is a member of the city council, or let's say somebody comes up at public comment, makes a complaint about misconduct of a board member that occurred at, a board meeting. It has to be a member of the city council who, brings up the issue. I think that there should be a removal. I think we should do a hearing. There's an executive session provision to hear complaints against public officials. So this could also occur in executive session. So you can, the mayor or members of the council can ask to have an executive session on this issue. And then you have a hearing, which essentially allows the person to respond to the allegations against them. And then the removal would have to happen in public. If you would like, we can draft more prescriptive procedures, but how it is now, again, sometimes I think a modicum of flexibility is good, is that the city council, depending on the situation in front of you, would be able to decide what procedure you're going to use.
Okay, so it's currently located in two places in our code. It's part of it is here in the removal of office, and then there's that executive session.
The
Section
executive,
separately.
the executive session does exist under Oregon law. I
Oh.
think some council rules reference it. But it is one of the reasons you can hold an executive session. And you can always choose to do it all in public, or you could choose to use the executive session provision. And again, it's the council's desire. If you would like to establish procedures now, we can certainly do that. I think that was part of the purpose of this code of conduct. And just so you know, Eric, that language is in all section or chapter 2 for all the different boards. So the other idea.
I assumed they were all the same for that removal chapter.
Yeah. And the idea of having a separate document is not to have to amend the code. And then if you have it in the code, it becomes less flexible. So for this, you can make changes via motion or resolution, but once it's in the code, you have to abide by the code for all the different situations. So there's less flexibility.
So do people want to just take out the conduct outside of meetings or to bring it back and discuss it with a little more information and thought?
It sounds like Ashley's going to separate out elected code of conduct from appointed.
Okay.
And
then try and maybe show us some other examples of codes of conduct?
I will look. I'm not
outside of meetings.
Yeah, I'm not confident. I can't think of any examples right now, but I will look. So I can't promise that I will come up with some.
But most municipalities don't have them, or?
This isn't an issue that comes up pretty often. Like, this is not an issue that, I've dealt with 10 times before. So
We're special here.
yeah, it's again, like, I'm just not familiar with it. It's not an issue that has never come up before, but it's not something that, I can think of 5 clients that, have developed procedures for it.
Okay, that's interesting. Huh.
You're talking about specifically the conduct outside of meetings?
Conduct outside of meetings and, more prescriptive, rules for removing board members. Often a city council rules of procedure for city councilors has, more prescriptive rules about addressing complaints against city councilors, but not against appointed officials. And again, I think part of it is that they serve at the pleasure of the city council. And, outside some of the speech concerns we're talking about, that if the person is acting erratically at meetings, is not attending meetings, is not, frankly, like doing a good job, they serve at your pleasure and you can remove them.
Right.
And a lot of times volunteers just stop coming.
Okay, so where are we?
Well, I would like to remove the conduct outside of meetings section and approve this.
If that's the way that we're going, can we additionally add the community portion to the first section of bold, be respectful and professional while attending city meetings?
Oh, yeah, I thought
Yeah.
Representing this, it was representing the city and its constituents. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I want to make sure I'm following. So the city and its constituents, that's in the first bolded sentence.
Right.
And then do we also want to, were we also doing another amendment?
Are we eliminating elected officials throughout?
Right, because we're still gonna have 2 separate documents, is my understanding.
And we're taking out conduct outside of meetings.
So
Sounds-
like
And we're
every
adding-
reference to elected officials, then I'll remove from this.
Right. And then we're adding the constituents. And then maybe Well, I mean, then we have a policy. And then if people want to do more research on how other cities address conduct outside of meetings. But we've waited, I feel we've waited way too long to.
So then we have a policy, but then if we come back, it's pretty easy to update this policy.
Right,
Right,
right.
okay.
The policy. Yeah.
We are taking out the conduct outside of.
Yes.
meetings. Okay.
Okay. So I know Jen has this too, but I have eliminate elected officials references throughout. Add the word constituents, remove conduct outside meetings. And those would be the amendments. So if you do a motion to approve it as amended, those are the 3 amendments that I have.
I have one more
One more.
one more that's along the same lines as the community, the council's expectation regarding the treatment of staff. And adding community members to that as well. I'm assuming this is during meetings, so public comment phases and all of that stuff. Adding community to that part of the bolded, treatment of staff and the community.
So can I chat about that for just a second? So not that I disagree, but that section is, if you read it, it's about like how the council would like appointed officials to criticize staff. So it's not just like general treatment, it's about that should go to
Right.
the city manager.
Okay.
So do you still want to add that, or do we want to add a bullet point maybe to the top one?
I guess the title of that was what was throwing me off. But yeah, no, I we don't need to add it. It's just the title for that paragraph is misleading to me, I guess.
Okay, so
I think he understands what you're saying.
Yeah.
Oh, you're okay now?
Yeah, no, yes, it's fine. I was just the title of that
Right.
was throwing me for treatment of staff.
Okay, would someone like to?
Well, I do like Eric's thought that it's also about regarding treatment of
the community.
Yeah,
But that's not what that section's about.
I know.
And then you get back to the outside.
Mhm.
So now we're having a circular conversation about what we took off.
Can I make a suggestion? Why don't we add it to the first ones? Because that talks about while attending city meetings, representing the city, or otherwise acting in his role as a public official. And then we have expectations. So how about we add something like treating all members of our community in a respectful manner?
Or being respectful in how you address staff, mayor, councilors, community members, and visitors already.
Yeah, so we have that. Does that cover
Right.
it?
Yeah,
Yep.
that does cover
I
it.
think that does cover it. I was just picking up on that the second instance down there. I was misinterpreting what that paragraph was intending to mean.
Well, can I move to adopt the code of conduct for appointed officials as amended here tonight?
There's a second?
I'll second that with all the changes. Yeah.
Any further discussion? Okay, roll call please, Jen.
Council President Kerr.
Yes.
Counselor Ostrander.
Yes.
Counselor Hammond.
Yes.
Counselor Hayes.
Yes.
Mayor Knopf.
Yes. Thank you, Ashley.
So
Wow, that was pulling teeth.
do we need a resolution or are we good with just this?
I don't think we need a resolution. So
Okay.
let me just look at how it was included in the packet. No, it's just adopting a policy. So I think the policy is adopted as amended.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, so when does this go into effect and how do we, how do we communicate that to all of every committee member and make sure that they're.
I think we would put it on each committee member's agenda.
Yeah. Bruce, do you have a suggestion here?
So, I can take it to each one of the appointed boards. So there's a consistency going through.
Right, so it's one person.
Every one person is giving the explanation, and I've heard everything everybody said. Or else someone else can do it.
Yeah, I think another idea, I think that's great. On the webpage for each one of their web pages, I would also include a tab for it there.
Yep.
And along those lines, just because I keep searching for it, Jen, could we also add the city council rules of conduct to the city council page on the website?
Yep.
Okay, anything else on that topic?
No.
Okay, so we're ready to go on to the monthly status report.
Oh, no.
That's the meeting schedule.
Oh, this meeting schedule.
Nice try.
Oh, this memorandum?
Page 44 of your packet.
Attachment B.
Oh.
That's part of the,
Yeah, that's part of the code of conduct. What am I missing?
The city council meeting schedule.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's what I said.
This is part of the code of conduct, the
Yeah.
memorandum?
Yep.
It's the next agenda item.
That's what I thought it was.
The memorandum
Yeah,
is the next agenda item.
It's the,
yeah, it's attachment B, this.
there's no attachment B. It's,
This is for our next agenda item. This is city council meeting schedule. This
Okay.
is part of the code of conduct. Right?
The
part
memorandum.
of the code of conduct.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it written into the code of conduct?
No,
It was just a memo from Bruce.
to us.
Okay,
This is really counselors' code of conduct. Which is not what we just,
Right.
Kind of brought it up
oh, okay,
at the
So-
beginning when we first started talking about
okay.
conduct.
About giving the, if you request
Right.
information that
Right.
goes to
Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah, we talked about it.
Okay, all right.
Okay, I think we're ready to move on.
Right.
Okay, so city council meeting schedule.
okay, and what's happened is that we've gotten a schedule and essentially a contract with Chamber for the meetings during the time that that this building will be under construction. And when we said, these are our dates, and they said, well, these are our dates, we did find some conflicts. And so we're trying to resolve those. You can resolve them tonight, that's great. If you need to go home and look at your calendar, you can do it in the next day or two, that would be very good. But May 5th to the 8th is not available over there. And we have to reschedule the meeting that's on the 6th, which is a council meeting, and the 7th is a coffee with the council.
Which, by the way, is tomorrow.
There's another one tomorrow, you're right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But the next one after it is
right.
what we're talking about.
I read the packet and I read the code of conduct, so I came prepared.
You mean with the meeting dates?
Yeah.
Okay. Good job. Good job. Tina.
I get it.
So in May, is it possible? Do we have to have two meetings or could we have,
Yeah,
and please don't kill the messenger on this, man. But is it possible to have a long meeting and like break for lunch or something or dinner? Like have a meeting a little earlier and do a long meeting?
You want to know what's on the agenda so far for May?
yeah.
Okay, so we still have it listed as two meetings because that's how it was planned. So May 6th, I have two proclamations, Public Works Week and EMS Week. We have planned to continue the tree public hearing.
Right.
So that one, because we aren't going to be able to have a meeting on that date, we'll have to notice. because that's not possible, or unless we try to find an alternative location.
And it's fine to put that off a little, because I think everyone was hoping that Les and Mike would be back and settled in for that, so.
We also have, if we, next meeting, next week, you guys are gonna discuss the Holland Orca agreement, so then that would be a resolution on the 6th. We have the budget amendment for Elk Creek Terrace that we talked about earlier, and possibly the Cal IGA. They're still working with the fire department on that, so that's May 6th. May 13th, I had discussed November 11th, but we're gonna talk about that already. The First Street Bridge evaluation options, and Tim is gonna present a master fee schedule. So those are the items we already have for those 2 meetings in April. And we're running a month away.
Yeah. That would be a really long meeting. To put all.
Okay, it was a bad.
We need to remember we have.
Well, if we put the tree off.
Yeah.
Yeah,
till-
I mean, do we just try and push through? Cause when are Les and Mike gonna be back?
I'm not sure exactly, when I think sometime, maybe at the end of April, but I'm fine. I mean, I
But
can't
even
speak
just
for
taking
everybody.
the
but
tree ordinance off, it's
Just
still.
moving it
a long
into the
meeting.
beginning of June, if we can do that, would be great.
Yeah, I mean, the proclamations.
Because it's not a rush,
Yeah.
huh?
The proclamations and resolutions should go pretty quick, because we will have hashed out anything on the Orca agreement next week. They're not bad, we would just need to watch what we add in the future to it, but if there's something big, we'll have to put it on.
We're not gonna meet in May, is that what we're saying?
No, don't.
Gary,
We're only gonna have one meeting
Okay,
on the 13th.
Another option.
we are gonna have it on the 13th.
It sounds
Well,
like,
that's
Can-
available.
So can we move that first week to the second week and council meeting on the 13th and copy with the councilors on the 14th?
And that's what Deanna had suggested, so we were kind of looking at the schedule. The other option too, you guys, we do have budget committee meetings, so if we needed to meet more, we could potentially meet before budgets on one of those days if things did come up.
you mean on the 15th?
And that's just if something big came up and we said, okay, you know what, the May 13th meeting is getting huge, we've added too much stuff. Maybe we can meet for an hour or two before a budget meeting, just as an option, maybe.
what dates are those budget meetings?
The 15th, 22nd, and 29th, I believe they're Thursdays?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What time do they start, Jen?
1 PM.
Thank you.
Oh, and I told you I was the 22nd, when it will be fine.
Oh, good. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll let Tim know.
Yeah. Yeah, they changed it on me. I didn't have to change.
Well, bummer for you that they got changed, but that works great.
And they all start at 1?
Yeah.
The budget, yes. So without the tree, I mean, it is possible. It wouldn't be too bad for one meeting
On the 13th.
on the
Yeah.
13th.
And then could you notice the tree meeting for sometime in June?
Yeah, so we would want to talk with you guys and make sure whatever dates in June, we exactly work for everyone. We have June 3rd and June 10th, and we typically do have a special meeting after the 10th. We haven't scheduled it yet to adopt the budget. That's what we've done in the past, so,
So why don't we say
Well,
the
the 10th
10th?
isn't available.
oh, was it 10th? That's on the list.
That's on our list.
Oh,
Okay.
10th on the list? Oh, dear.
Oh, yeah, but the 9th and the 11th are available, so,
So could we say the 9th or the 11th for the trees?
yeah.
I won't be available on Mondays. Those are the
On what dates?
Mondays.
Okay.
Mondays are just not good days.
It's not good for me either.
So we're finished with May, right? We're gonna try one,
Do I put in the 13th?
yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna move everything to the 13th and postpone the tree
Right.
to, postpone trees to June.
So we don't have a meeting on the 6th.
Great.
So that takes care of the 6th. For copy with the counselor on the 7th, do we want to see if the chamber is available on the 14th?
Or we could, I mean,
Or just skip the month?
I think we could skip a month.
What?
Sorry.
I mean, I can ask Laura tomorrow and see if it's available, and if it's not available, you guys can entertain the idea of skipping it.
Oh, okay, let's see.
And traditionally, we haven't had a third budget meeting, so we could use that as a city council meeting if we
Scheduled for
needed
the
it.
29th.
Yeah.
That's a good
But
idea.
I mean, if we need to have a budget meeting, we need to have a budget meeting, but that could be a placeholder. just
I've
in
already
case.
got a conflict there, but
The meeting would be very close to the first of July. June, I'm sorry. If we have the meeting on May 29th, whatever the first Monday or Tuesday is in July or June, we would have a meeting, so it might be just a couple of days apart.
That's true. Okay.
Um,
And just, oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Barb.
Just a reminder, June 3rd is my one meeting that I miss for scholarship night.
Okay, so for May, we're gonna move everything to the 13th, and I'm gonna ask Laura if the 14th is available for coffee with the counselor.
And may I make a suggestion about coffee with the counselor, since we have two of them? Is it okay if we just leave that up to Counselor Kerr to make that decision, since she heads that meeting? If she does, if it's a decision or between her and Gary to make that decision.
Oh, for the 14th.
About the 14th, I do. Yeah,
Oh, you do?
yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to do it by yourself, Gary?
I'm sure someone could join me.
Yeah, so maybe,
I'm not available that day. So, Eric.
I'll have to check my calendar. I wasn't prepared to talk about coffee with the counselors.
But say if we don't have two people on a date where it's available, we don't have it. That's my. If that's okay with everybody.
that's fine with me.
Okay, so we are gonna cancel coffee with the counselor.
Yeah. Hey, I'm sorry, don't we have, is there a town hall somewhere on here?
That
April
is
5th.
Saturday.
Yeah, I'm gonna bring that up during. the
Oh,
order.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Canceling it, or is Eric gonna see if he's got the 14th?
I can get back to you. Today's Tuesday. By tomorrow,
Okay,
I can let you know if I've got that available.
all right, and I'll check with Laura just to be on the safe side.
Yes.
Okay, so we got,
We got 1 month done.
Okay, May's done. So June, the 10th is not available, the 9th would not work with Deanna because that's a Monday, so,
11th,
Gary,
or Gary. And so how about? the-
taking it by myself. I'm good on the 11th.
Wednesdays are
Okay.
difficult for me.
For you.
Wednesday nights, fire drill. Is that Thursday a possibility?
I can check with Laura. I just looked like the day before after I wasn't thinking about drill, so I can ask her if Thursday the 12th, because that way I don't have DRB or anything. Because that's the second.
The second Thursday?
So I will ask, if it's available the 13th, would that work for everyone else?
12th of June.
Yeah.
June 12th, and that would be where you put the trees, right?
Yeah, because we're gonna move that to that meeting.
Okay.
Is it that meeting or the one on the 3rd?
I don't think the 3rd would probably be early enough.
Oh, okay.
Because if they're coming back, oh, you said they might be coming back in April.
Yeah,
Um,
think.
we'll confirm with them, but it's probably better because the 3rd, we won't have Barb, so we wouldn't want to do it on the 3rd.
So let's do the 12th. Oh, yeah, because that's the meeting I have. Yeah, so the 12th.
Okay,
Just say the 12th.
I will
Say.
check with Laura and let you guys know.
okay, June's finished.
Okay, August is taken by National Night Out.
It'd be nice to be able to go to that.
It would be, we are now going back to the Monday doesn't work and the Wednesday doesn't work. So do you want me to see if August, that Thursday,
Is that,
I'm gonna be out of town. I was originally scheduled to leave town right after our meeting.
So I will
Maybe I'll be back in town on the following week, but
I'll give up that Monday.
When do you,
If the fourth,
fourth?
I can be a little, I mean,
What about you, Gary? What would the fourth look like for
what
you?
about this?
No,
If we were to have the meeting without Eric, then the Wednesday would work. We would want, if that was the case, we'd probably want to keep it light.
You okay with that? Eric?
yeah, you don't make big decisions without me, right?
So far, what's scheduled for that would be the TAF grant vote.
What?
TAF grant vote, the
Oh.
tourism arts funds. But that is also something you can look at and share any questions that you have before the meeting.
Mhm.
We can work through everything.
Eric, how long are you gone?
I'm gone. For
Just wanted-
5 or 6 days. I should be back Monday or Tuesday morning.
That, Jen, you look at the calendar, is that around the time of the work session? Or is it,
Eric will be back.
I'll be back in time for the work session.
okay,
So it's just the one meeting. So let me just put a note, Eric out, keep light.
So we're looking at the 7th?
No, the sixth.
That's six.
No, it's the sixth.
Oh, okay.
I think I've got a conflict then.
Oh,
Or we could do the 4th. I know that Gary's not available, but we could do the same thing that we're gonna do for Eric.
If it's the 7th, I might be able to remote in
oh,
Zoom.
I'm gonna be out of town that week. And so we do have a meeting on the 5th?
Yeah, well, we did, but we had to switch it because this is because of National Night Out.
Okay. Yeah,
So you weren't gonna be here anyway for that week,
right.
so.
okay, so if you're not gonna be here anyway for that week, do you wanna go back to Monday?
I will give up that Monday. I'll give you that Monday.
Okay, but we still keep it light because we won't have Gary.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. So
Talking about the 4th?
Mhm.
Okay,
What time is National Night Out? Is it 6?
I might be able to squeeze that one in. Since I think I'm leaving on the 5th.
Okay, so we're gonna go with August 4th and light. It may be, yeah, we'll keep, I have that listed just in case. Okay, November 11th is Veterans Day. We would be closed. I can look and see if that Thursday is available in November. Actually, never mind, that is the Thursday. Wait, no, I'm in the wrong month. Sorry.
Yeah, it's a Tuesday.
The 13th, I can check and see if the 13th is available.
For me.
Yeah, that works for me if it's available.
Okay.
Wait a minute, are you talking about rescheduling the 11th? Here you have rescheduled to the 10th or 12th.
Right, but Monday doesn't work for Gary and Lisa and Wednesday doesn't work for Eric.
Oh, okay.
Because when I was doing it with Laura, we just looked like the day before and day after. But I
Okay.
wasn't thinking about schedules, so we're gonna check with the 13th. And then December. So that, from November 25th, which we deal with Thanksgiving anyways, but the chamber is not available through the 6th.
What if we tried to have a meeting on the 9th and the 16th?
That's probably very doable.
That should work for me.
And for coffee with the counselors
Just be
or coffee.
when?
No, it has to reschedule.
17th instead? Council would be the 17th.
It's
Maybe the
on the
10th.
first Monday, so.
Right, is the 10th available? Yeah, it is. Okay, so it would be the 10th. Right?
Well, we would do it on the 10th, yeah.
Yeah.
We'll check and make sure, the 9th is available, but we'll check and see if the 10th is available for coffee with the counselor and the 16th available for a council meeting.
It's so far out that I don't know about that 16th date. If I go anywhere, I would be able to remote in.
Well, I think with all of this, we need to be very flexible.
Yeah.
And there's gonna be meetings where we all aren't gonna be able to be here.
And we can look at December as, like, December's always a hard month anyways.
Yeah.
So, and as it gets closer, we can kind of evaluate.
We might have everything done and we won't have to have a meeting. Okay,
All right,
is that
so
it?
that covers that. I will get with Laura and then I'll shoot an email out to everyone.
Okay,
You guys know it's confirmed.
thank you.
Thanks for your flexibility. Make it work.
Okay, so now the monthly status report. Do you have any questions? Okay. Going once. Okay. Next, we have mayor communications. I had a chance to go to the Ways and Means Committee road trip. They came to Astoria. The entire Ways and Means Committee and speakers had 2 minutes to do their pitch for what they want them to include in the state budget. And it was a very interesting meeting at the Liberty Theater. So that was.
What was some of the main things?
Well, there's a lot of, the city of Warrenton wants, is working on a new wastewater treatment plant, a lot of housing initiatives, childcare. It's all the, list of everything that we need, but it was Clatsop, Tillamook and Columbia counties
Wow.
that were involved. So it was interesting. They had a huge clock. Because you got 2 minutes and man, they cut you off as soon as it was over. And I decided we're never having a big clock in front of, because there were some people that, they were so interested in putting everything in the 2 minutes that they, kind of a thing. So that's all I have. Anybody have any counselor communications? And then good to the order. There's a town hall, Saturday at Seaside High School's gym at 1 o'clock. And we've been invited.
Town hall with who?
Javadi,
I'm not sure who he is. I don't know enough about him.
he's from Tillamook. He's a dentist and
Is he-
he's the one that has done the lodging tax.
Oh, the initiative to change it.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay.
Anything else for good?
Yeah, could we just really quickly, I want to ask maybe Bruce about this, what is, when Michelle got up to speak about the signage in the bathroom, I'm not sure what she was talking about. Is there signage?
There's signage. It is I have to be careful about my words.
Well, we haven't had a chance to read her
Yeah.
email either.
I noticed and did send it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I went through all the emails that were specifically related to agenda items. and stuff.
So maybe we should wait.
Well, I'd like to know what the signage is. So
Okay.
what is it?
The sign, because it's so stylized, it appears to be a silhouette of a man, silhouette of a woman, and then kind of a combination. So there's 3 people that it's welcoming, I guess. But
So
it's not,
the comments from Michelle, is that it currently has this sign on there indicating that it's a family restroom, which is not typically deemed as inclusive language or inclusive signage. And she's been requesting that it be, before it was installed, that instead of it saying family, that it say gender neutral, restroom with changing table, something along the lines of like what the Warren House has. They have a restroom that just says restroom with urinal, and then the other one says restroom without urinal. And so it's anyone's welcome, and it's very, very inclusive. And this has been perceived by a number of different groups that it's exclusionary because only someone with a child or a family is allowed to utilize this facility. And so that was her request. And it looks like the family got installed, and that's what she wanted us to
Oh,
discuss.
I see. So
Why it wasn't the other one, which she included in there, but it's not loading for some reason.
does it have a urinal?
On the other two bathrooms, does it say men and women?
I believe, yeah.
And I think that was part of it as well, is that it should just be inclusive. Not just the family restroom. She was talking about that as well. But I think that talking more along the lines of you show a urinal and a toilet on the men's room, because generally a men's restroom comes with both. And then toilets in the women's restroom. Same with the.
And then for the private bathroom, the individual,
The restrooms now.
the individual bathroom,
The signs are what.
Sign. So instead of saying men, it actually shows what facilities are available in that space.
Okay.
and then the one that's a private restroom, that's individual stall with its own door, right? That's the third restroom that's in there. And that, couldn't that just say bathroom? I mean,
I think that was her point, is that it says family when it could have.
Just say bathroom.
There is signage that exists that could have been ordered.
Toilet.
Because it could.
More inclusive.
It could show a toilet and a changing table on.
Does it have to have words and pictures?
I'm not sure what ADA requirements are for that, but.
I don't think so,
It doesn't have pictures.
but it
has pictures
It does
of
have
people.
pictures.
Currently, it does have.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I meant.
Pictures of people, but it doesn't have like a urinal and a toilet. And
I think that's the whole thing behind that, is because it specifically says men, women, family, it's very exclusionary to a lot of people. So
Just
just
say everyone.
come on in the water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just said, bathroom that said everyone on it. That's
But-
right.
But to show the facility to show what's available in there.
Is there a changing table in there?
Probably in the family room, I would imagine. Yeah,
And a urinal?
probably not.
No,
It would just be a toilet and a changing table. So just because there's not a urinal in there doesn't mean a man can't go in there. I mean, they use our
Right.
toilets at home all the time, right?
Everyone would be great.
I think that the other two,
So
Yeah.
men can use the women's restrooms and women can use the men's restrooms.
not the way it's set up now.
I think.
I mean, it's not that-
Her comment was focused generally around the family restroom.
That's what
Not
I
not
thought.
having
Yeah.
exclusionary sign.
Although I think, she's clear that whenever we can, we should have gender neutral.
I think it would have, we should have designed the new addition to have more of that anyways, but
Right.
it's.
That was kind of a challenge.
We're over that,
Yeah.
anyways now.
We're working on the signs.
Yeah, the signage is what we can deal with at this point.
I think it'd be really sweet if it just said everyone. All.
I've used the men's room before because
I use it all the time because it's so damn full at the woman's room.
Okay, so what are we doing here?
Are we done with that?
No, I think that.
Is it possible to get that, the sign changed
Can
from,
we change it?
from saying family to one of the suggested gender inclusive languages?
Council, that's what the council wants, yes.
I'd like to. I'd like to see it changed. Yeah, because I think, I think it's important.
Okay.
Makes a statement.
Okay.
Please.
We'll do it.
Okay.
We like
let's-
everybody.
Okay,
Yeah.
anything else? Okay.
Coffee with the
Oh,
counselor
coffee with counselors.
tomorrow.
Morning.
Yeah. Oh, my
I know.
10 o'clock.
Oh, jeez.
Are we? Are we gonna talk about this building officials fund at any point?
I think we're gonna discuss it during the budget meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because we got a couple of public comments
yeah,
about
Yeah.
that.
yeah. Are you okay with that
Discussing it then,
at the
sure,
budget meeting?
sure.
Yeah, what can we do in the budget meeting about it?
Think we'll need to investigate that. I'm not sure. Paying people back.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about that either, but
Yeah, I think that might be a little far reaching, but
Oh, I think, yeah,
I mean, that's a lot of, but going forward, we would still have money to pay for an additional building official, which I think we need. And, I think that we could put some money into the affordable housing program.
there was a suggestion that some money be put from one thing into the affordable housing. What was that? Taking it from what and putting it in affordable housing?
It was the refund, of the potential refund, instead of the city retaining it back into its general fund coffers or wherever it would go into the affordable housing fund
And
instead.
can we do that legally?
Well,
I didn't think so.
I think you could probably figure out a way around it, but it would be a long way around into a back door and it's too much.
yeah,
But going forward,
if
we
we were-
could do something.
if we were refunding money and money had gone into those funds, potentially there is that, but it sounds like a mess.
Yeah.
That sounds kind of creepy. I mean, I'm definitely not in favor of refunding money, but I can see, I'd love to see it rather going into that one fund in the future, going into the affordable housing fund, if there's a legal way to do it. And I don't know.
There is, and I think that we need to get some just some documentation on that so we can actually see it with our own eyes. But it is, you can do a fee schedule change and reallocate those funds into a different bucket.
I just thought that there was a state law that the money from
Well, if the fee schedule is adjusted, so our permits are a different rate, and then instead of some portion of it, because we have the affordable housing fund as part of construction, and so increasing the affordable housing fund allotment of it while decreasing the permit fees.
Can we do that legally too? I don't know.
We can do the way that Eric just said.
Okay.
Go ahead and you split the two, but you totally separate them so that one of them is not paying the other. You can go.
Okay.
The building official fund is just set amount.
Yeah,
It has
so
to go in there and it
right.
can't be used for anything else.
By state law.
It's not a set amount. It's not the building official fund isn't a set amount. The city sets the
Percentage,
of
isn't
the
it?
building permit, right?
Please so.
And that goes
And
in,
the percentage of it.
right, so if we just,
Costs to run the
so
program.
if we decided we were only gonna charge 25% of what we're currently charging for a building permit, and the other 75% of that we're charging for adding to the affordable housing fund,
Yeah.
then the house.
That's legal. That'd be great.
Two separate things.
Yeah.
Yep. And then, but this going back and forth, we like Tim.
Yeah. And
You do have to weigh the cost of city staff.
Yes, you do.
one of the questions was, can we charge, say, for space or office space or something? When you go back for coffee, you can see the table where Alton works
Yeah.
in the middle of the hallway.
Yeah.
We charge for that. We're trying to get every dime we can.
But it's just, you need to hire, I'll probably almost need to hire someone else and dwindle that fund down. And then in a few years, you can decide where you're at with the affordable housing. But it would grow And we probably need to do that before the city makes their payment, or did you already?
You already did. For the new buildings.
Never mind.
We did that back in December.
You bet, I like that idea.
Okay. Got it all solved.
At some point, we're gonna
The
talk
world's problems for the week are done.
about.
But should that be done at the budget
Yes,
meeting level?
Yeah.
Budget committee meeting? Okay.
yes.
But before the budget committee, let's make sure everything that we're talking about
It's legal. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, anything else?
You might run into everybody else that's already paid. And then all of a sudden the fees go down to 25%. So
Fees aren't gonna go down though, because
They're gonna go up for the affordable housing portion.
right, so the fee's gonna be the same, it's just gonna be appropriated.
No,
Yes.
Yes.
Fee and increase your affordable housing.
if your building permit fees stay the same amount is going to go into the building official.
No, we lower the building permit fees and raise the amount of fees that go into the affordable housing.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, that's what everyone's saying.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it is.
okay, so we're gonna talk more about it and you're gonna find out legalities. Okay, anything else? Meeting's adjourned.